Halloween
forever.
Did you guys hear this thing about how the most important part of cooking a turkey is actually the sound system that you have in your kitchen? Did you guys hear this?
Oh, is it?
No.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, apparently it's all about that bass. Welcome, boys and girls, to a fucking holiday minisode of Halloween is Forever. I'm Brian.
I'm Steve.
Who that boy over there?
I'm Louie from Haunted Hangover.
We
Woo
got
woo.
a special guest on the podcast here this week. We got Louie from the Haunted Hangover. I imagine a lot of folks who are fans of Halloween is Forever, probably also fans of the Haunted Hangover. I was fortunate enough to guest on there with you guys. Well, it was probably a good year ago now, right?
Yeah, it's been a while.
We've been talking about getting Louie over here, and we are always slow and dragging our feet in terms of what we're going to be, what our topics are going to be and that sort of stuff. So we said, you know what, let's pull the freaking trigger. It was a perfect opportunity. Meg ended up having a conflict with some crazy work schedule. And we said we've been talking for a while about getting Louie over here. So this ended up being a perfect opportunity. The stars aligned. He was able to jump on here with us for a very festive pre-Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving week episode. Yins guys might even be listening to this while you're doing a little festive cooking for your families. So you might be able to glean some culinary tips from this particular episode that you can utilize with your friends and family. I sure hope you do. We are going to be talking about our favorite food scenes or eating scenes or cooking scenes, all things culinary horror. We're going to be talking about here today, as this is, of course, the season of gluttony. That's what I like to, at least I like to kind of put my blame, like misdirect my blame, projected onto other people. So when I eat like a fucking pig, I could just say like, well, that's what everyone does. You know what I mean? That's how I cope with it. But yeah, if you haven't listened to The Haunted Hangover, go ahead and definitely check it. I was actually thinking before we got on, I was like, it's kind of a weird role reversal because our show is called Halloween is Forever. And certainly we talk about Halloween a lot. We do a lot of Halloween centric things, but typically speaking, it's just broadly horror movie. Yours is called Haunted Hangover, but it's more specifically Halloween. Not only exclusively Halloween, but you guys talk about the holiday a lot more.
Yeah, like our show, it's strange because we've been doing it now for like 3 years, and we've evolved over the 3 years.
Yeah.
We're bringing in other aspects, just kind of talking about other things, because honestly, you can stretch Halloween so thin, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, there's a lot to talk about, and we've only scratched the surface, but predominantly we're a Halloween podcast, and we've got, we're a Halloween podcast and channel, I should say, because we do have a YouTube channel, and there's a lot of video components to what we do, and I review haunted attractions and events and exhibits and stuff like that as well. But the last year, I'd say we focus on the spooky nostalgia side of things, which isn't necessarily horror, but it can also be TV shows that are for children, maybe family stuff, which wouldn't necessarily be like, what would you consider something like The Munsters or The Addams Family? Like that's not really
it's
horror.
Like horror adjacent.
Yeah. And then stuff growing up, like My Pet Monster. If you were to mention My Pet Monster, we talk about something like the Big Frank toy from like 95 or 96.
I'm looking
really
at my
horror.
I'm looking at my Big Frank right here. You see it?
Exactly.
He's right off screen.
Brian, don't say that.
Mine's about 2 feet away from me too. I can grab him if I want.
I also didn't specify. I call my dick Big Frank. I did not specify that.
Oh, sorry. I don't call my dick Big Frank. He has a different name. I don't want to repeat it here. But yes, we've grown over. We have Anthology Obscura now, where we talk, because I'm a big fan of anthology television and film. So like, we talk about, it's almost a spinoff, but it's under the same umbrella.
Right.
Where we talk about anthology television, horror films. We kind of try to go with the holidays. So like the holidays are happening right now. So we try to cover Christmas and stuff like that too. Yeah. So we've evolved, but Halloween is always the main focus and just kind of what we talk about.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it, and just all aspects of the holiday, film, TV, traditions,
Yep.
everything, all aspects of Halloween. Love Halloween.
Talking about what bad kids do on Halloween, shit
Yes,
like
that's
that.
one of Dave's favorite topics.
Yeah.
He's always talking about shitty kids. That's one of his favorite things.
Shitty kids Halloween. He was talking about that, which we were talking about. I think it came up on our show, which is like the quintessential 90s shitty kid Halloween costume, which is like jeans, a black hoodie, and a super cheap like Walgreens Jason mask. That's like the shitty kid Halloween starter kit.
Yeah.
That's Dave's like favorite thing of all. He loves Devil's Night the day before Halloween, and he loves like shitty kids, and that's just what it always comes up. I feel like we probably repeat it. Our listeners are probably like, all right, Dave, shut the fuck up about shitty kids. We get it, but it always comes up, man. Shitty kids and Halloween go hand in hand, I guess.
They are. It's the shitty kid holiday for sure.
Throwing eggs, man.
Be your shittiest. That was me, skateboarding around with a freaking book bag full of eggs and toilet paper.
See, I was a good kid. I was actually pretty well behaved, so I was the one dressed up as like Freddy Krueger and I just wanted candy and watch horror movies. I wasn't that shitty. Dave was the shitty kid. I knew shitty kids, but I was not one of them.
I was a shitty kid. I was a very shitty kid. But yeah, so a lot of crossover interest here, as you might imagine. Obviously, goes without saying, go check them out. I was actually just listening to you guys' episode a few days ago. As you know, I listen to all the episodes, but I am psyched to check out that Halloween party in Philly that you guys talked about next week, because I work in Philly. Yeah. I live in Pittsburgh, but I work in Philly, so I'm out there almost every week, and I'm definitely checking that out. That sounded fucking awesome.
Yeah. I want to check it. I didn't get to go. He went, and I was.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Dave
I wanted to go, but I was so busy this October. So I didn't get a chance. So, but next year I'm definitely going, because I love that museum's pretty dope. So I can't
Meg's
imagine.
Been there, actually.
Yeah, I can't imagine what a Halloween party would be like at
a medical oddities museum. Yeah,
babies in jars and shit like around So
what's more festive than babies in jars? That's what I always say. I try to put them on the Christmas tree. My wife's all mad about it.
What's more Halloween than that? There you go.
God, that's a real problem if you put your drink down and you pick up. You put your drink down and then you pick up a medical jar.
Funny enough, that was my biggest disappointment, because when we were talking about it, we're just talking about like the 2022 Halloween season. I was talking to Dave, and I'm like, wait, so the party's not in the museum? It's in like a hall next door, or like in the same building? And I was a little disappointed because I thought you'd be next to like a two-headed whatever, and like drinking a beer. But no, it's like you
I'm
get
trying
to
to
walk
drop
through it,
out
and then
like
the party.
eyeballs in people's drinks and shit like that.
Yes.
Like I'm trying to vandalize the place.
I want to be next to the grossest thing when I'm drinking a beer and eating French fries at a Halloween party. That's exactly what I want. So that sounds like a real Halloween party to me. So
yeah. If I'm not right on the edge of just being arrested or vomiting, that's the only things I want to have happen at the Halloween party. All right, so let's get into before we get into the topic a little bit, we got a couple of little things we got to discuss here. First of all, as is tradition, boys and ghouls, what are we drinking today? You guys got some beers, or what do you got?
I got some beers.
What do you got, Steve? What kind of beers you got?
I got a beer, picked it up from Abjuration down there in McKees Rocks.
Oh, this is going to be one of them damn gloop gloppers, ain't it?
No. Watch this.
Really?
Watch this game. Right. Watch this. Schwarzbier.
Oh, is it Schwarzbier?
Schwarzbier. 4.9%. Nice and roasty.
Nice. Look at Steve. It's a coming-of-age tale.
It's not. I mean, look. I also picked up a Gloop Glop while I was there because they had a Mountain Dew black cherry slushy.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
That they also put out, so I got that and got my Schwarzbier.
Yeah, nice.
I have two modes: gross and classic. And
you're real two-faced in that way.
Hell yeah.
Louie, what do you got? You got anything over there?
Just coffee, man. Caffeinated. Yeah. If I drank a beer, I don't know if I'd be able to function right now. It's Sunday. It's the holy day. No drinking for me. I don't.
You don't partake on the Sabbath. We all know
this.
It's
Sunday, man. No. Just left church, came here to record and talk about dead babies like we were just talking about. So
Louie just got out of the confessional.
Yes.
You can't tell.
Confessing all my sins.
I actually did the same thing. I got some coffee here, but I'm also drinking. I'm balancing my uppers and downers here, guys. I got a little, actually from Philly. I got a little Hallertau Pills from Human Robot Brewing Company, which they make some tremendous classic lager beers. This is their Hallertau Pills, one of their kind of, I don't know if they make it year round, but it's one of their more standard ones you see all the time, but it's just freaking tremendous. So I'm getting down on one of those. I had a Permanis Brothers sandwich for lunch. I had a little work thing at the Permanis, had a couple Hellas, had a couple had a little gabagool Permanis. So I'm all freaking psyched up. I got indigestion, heartburn already. I'm ready to fucking jump in to some appetizing horror. But we got one more thing we got to do first of all. If you listened to last week's episode, or perhaps even if you're new to the show, one thing that we do on a monthly basis, and the first Monday of every single month, is we do a showdown episode. How that works is we got a big old spinny wheel full of topics. They could be subgenres, they could be particular performer, whatever. It's just a bunch of topics. We spin that wheel 3 times and we get 3 potential topics for our showdown episode. We put it out there on the social medias for all our friends and listeners to vote on. And then once we have that topic, we each pick a movie associated with that topic. We argue about it. Somebody's going to get a jackknife powerbomb. Somebody's going to put in the Boston Crab, no holds barred. And then ultimately, somebody gets to take home that son of a bitchin' strap, that shoulder candy, that championship belt for the month. Listen, guys, I'm not trying to make a big deal about it, but your boy's the champ right now. I got my belt. I've been walking around. I've been cruising into Giant Eagle, getting my chip chopped ham, just tossing that belt around, just showing everybody who's boss. For the November Showdown episode, we had 3 topics for the December Showdown. First one was British horror. The second one was the best of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And then the last one was Kaiju Big Battle, which is basically any kaiju sans Godzilla, because we want to give him his own show. The winner, I'm sure everyone's doing an imaginary drum roll in their head right now. Perhaps no surprise, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. However, I will say, it was a barn burner. It was a slobber knocker. It came down to just a few votes between British horror and Nightmare on Elm Street. Actually, we're exactly tied on the Instagrams, which is quite rare. So we did have to go to Twitter for the tiebreaker, and it is Nightmare on Elm Street. So, reminder, guys, we're doing what's called Secret Satan for December. It's kind of our take on Secret Santa, where we're actually this time going to have some listeners who have signed up already on the Instagrams. If you haven't already, go to our post. It's got a big red Santa devil looking guy on that post, and comment or shoot us a DM and just say, hey, I want to be considered for the Secret Satan episode. So we're going to put everyone who puts their name in the hat on that same old big ass spinny wheel we get our topics from, and we are going to determine 3 people who are going to pick Nightmare on Elm Street movies for us to watch, and then each one of us is going to have to defend one of them and fight it out. Like I said, no holds barred, extreme rules apply, and someone's going to take home that sumbitchin' strap for the month of December. So get ready, put your name in the hat over there on the Instagrams, send us a DM or comment on that post, and then if you get picked, we'll notify you. And then you get to pick a Nightmare on Elm Street movie for us. Guys, I'm not the kind of person that likes to drop hints for Christmas, presents. I like to be surprised, but hint, hint, Dream Warriors, I would prefer it. I would prefer it if given the opportunity, or the first one. Although I am going to talk about neither of those today. I'm going to talk about a completely different one.
I wouldn't mind something new.
Oh, Steve. Steve's going to go out on a limb here. All right, fine.
And I'm not talking about the remake. Please don't, not the remake.
Oh, I was hoping that people were going to take that as their suggestion.
I will clarify.
You're a big fan, Louie, of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think if you're not a fan, you get your horror card taken away.
Yeah,
you don't like a Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever met a horror fan who's like, hey, I hate those movies.
Yeah, not a big Freddy guy. Yeah, you don't hear that very often.
Who cares about those movies? No, I love Freddy. Freddy's the man.
I just watched which I've seen 100 times, but that was actually my watch on Halloween, or was it the night before Halloween? I watched The first one, and good God, that movie is just so fucking good. Every time I see a Johnny Depp explode into a volcano of blood, my God. What's your favorite? If you had to pick one in the franchise, what's your favorite?
It's weird. I'm a sucker for part 4, the Dream Master. Like I love part 3. Don't get me wrong. I think most people, they say Dream Warrior.
Dream Warrior, that one, number 1 and number 3 have got to be like the two big favorites, right?
Yeah, I'm weird. I'm like one of those people that's a big fan of like the late 80s Fred. Like I actually like part 5, like the whole comic book scene and all that stuff. But part 4
that's cool.
is probably my favorite one. I love the soundtrack to that movie. Like I have the vinyl. It's amazing. Like the songs on it and everything on that are great. And just the overall, like her getting all her friends' powers and then fighting Freddy in that church at the end. Like,
it's a great climactic scene.
Part 4 is always kind of been it takes elements from the third one that I love so much with all the dream powers and everything, and then rolls it all up into one person. And is it Alice, the character's name, if I remember correctly?
I think so. That sounds right. I wouldn't. Yeah.
And she's a babe respectfully too, so that helps. But part four, I'd say part 4. Part 4 is probably my favorite one.
Well, hey, we might be talking about part 4 here on this particular episode. So
you're right.
Because one of my favorite scenes of the entire franchise is in part 4, which we'll talk about because it does pertain to food here in a second.
Yes, Steve, I just realized that.
Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. Big Freddy versus Jason guy.
Yeah.
That's one of Steve's favorites, which is fantastic. I love
would that one count for this coming up?
I think so.
I mean,
personally, I would say that it probably should. It's a Freddy. He's prominently displayed. Although I would say it is I was going to say it's maybe more of a Jason movie than a Freddy movie, but it's pretty
down the middle, man. Yeah. They're both important in that one.
Yeah.
Plus, Freddy's name comes first, so you can't argue it.
I like it. I rewatched it recently, and it's some of the there's some just very 2003 stuff that doesn't hold up.
That
and I'm just like,
is sick too.
Soundtrack rules.
That soundtrack is awesome. It reminds me of like being like 20 years old, like 19 when it came out.
Doesn't it have some like real new metal edge?
Oh yeah, it's like Kill Switch Engage and shit like that. Yeah,
El Nino and like Seether or whatever. Yeah, it's
Seether.
Slipknot.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but listen, it's got a lot of bangers on it. That's a great soundtrack. I'll still throw it on occasionally just to reminisce.
If I was gonna say that for some reason, Corey Taylor comes up pretty often in our podcast.
It's amazing.
I don't know why. Well, maybe because he's in the horror community, and we talk. Well, did we talk about
polarizing figure from what I've? I don't follow it too closely, but from what I've heard, some people like him or hate him.
Bad Candy or whatever, which I think he was just in it. I don't think that was his movie, but that was a fucking stinker. Otherwise, I don't mind. Listen, I'll fuck with some Slipknot. All right, guys, let's get into this topic. Once again, we're going to talk about, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we're going to talk about the movies that we give thanks for, or the scenes we give thanks for that pertain specifically to the culinary arts, whether it be eating. We're all gourmands here. We all this is well established. Steve's got stuffing. Gourmands. Gourmands. We are. That's a t-shirt right there, guys. So we're going to jump into this son of a bitch here. And guys, if you don't mind, we're going to do 10 of them. And there's 3 of us. So do the math. I'm going to do 4. One of us got to do 4. So I'll start off just because I have 4 of them. But let's get right into it because we were just talking about it. My first pick is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. And I'm talking about that damn meatball on the pizza scene.
Iconic. That's an iconic Freddy scene right there.
That's the first one. I thought food in horror movies.
Yeah.
There's entire movies that are about, food and something pertaining to horror and food. This is one particular scene in one movie, but it's so fucking gross and so cartoonish and weird and wild. And that's what I love about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is they'll do whatever because it's dream logic, right? You really have the ability to do whatever. So just to kind of set the table, if you will, here's what the scene breaks down to. I would urge you, if you haven't seen it, watch the whole movie, but even if you're just curious, check it out on YouTube. He's got humans on meatballs on pizza, which I thought maybe that is made more sense to play out from a practical effects standpoint. But when I think pizza toppings, my brain does, said list 10 pizza toppings. Meatball might not be on the top 10. So it was kind of an interesting choice to make them little meatballs. Maybe a pepperoni, maybe a sausage, maybe a mushroom. Nope, meatball.
I guess kind it's because, you can correlate it with like someone's head kind of, I guess, which is when you watch the scene, it's like faces, on the
maybe they
meatballs.
needed something spherical. I kind of thought maybe they need to like puncture it because spoiler alert, when they puncture it, some goo comes out. Because Freddy is, of course, leaning over top of the pizza, with his gloved hand, and he stabs, with his blade, stabs one of them, and then goo kind of comes out, and the little meatballs are screaming and stuff like that. I can direct like my love for this scene and the scene, just being carved into my brain, is I think a lot to do with the fact that I loved. Food Fighters, the action figures when I was little. Food Fighters.
I remember those, yeah.
I have all my Food Fighters still, and I freaking adored Food Fighters. And so, I don't know, this idea of violence and food, well, maybe was ingrained in me at a young age. But I remember the first time I saw this scene, I was like, this can't be real. This is like a fever dream.
Yeah.
I think you have to look at, like, when did Meat Lovers Pizza become popular at Pizza Hut?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's maybe why it was meatballs. And they're like, we're going to do a little crossover. It's like everybody's in the Pizza Hut and Meat Lovers right now. It's the 80s. Let's get it going.
Oh, and if any franchise would have leaned into a corporate sponsorship, it would have been Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right.
Because they put Freddy on fucking
especially in
everything.
the late 80s. Yeah, dude. It's funny. I just did a video recently reviewing a bunch, and I know I'm going on a tangent here, but I was just talking about different Freddy items.
Mm-hmm.
And
I listened to it.
It was actually in our Halloween special last year. Well, this year, I should say. The last year. Yeah. The year's already over in my mind.
You're already moved on,
but this past October, our Halloween special, I had a segment where I picked items, like Freddy items, and 3 of them were like literally geared towards children and all from 89. It's weird. It's crazy. Yeah. So I'm surprised he didn't have any food tie-ins in the late 80s. It's really weird.
Yeah, you would have thought he would have, because I mean, they definitely, like, horror cross merch was a big thing around this time frame. I mean, you had freaking Freddy 1-900 numbers. I think you guys talked about all that stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I know he's not the most appetizing looking human being in the world. His face almost looks like, they always try to get that perfect stretch of cheese when they pick up the piece of pizza in the commercial. That's almost what his face looks like. Maybe they could have went that direction, but not the most appetizing thing in the world. But
there's one thing about that. I don't even know if you mentioned it, but doesn't he have that line, soul food?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that about soul food? Yeah, which is great. Like, that's a great Freddy one-liner. And also, another really cool thing about that scene that I always liked, and it's, again, the effect, is they obviously built a giant pizza. And people are actually sticking their heads through it. And then when they cut to like the wide like shot of Robert Englund as Freddy, you could tell they built like a small little meatball with a face on it moving with, I guess, like a little animatronic.
It's a little like puppet. Yeah.
It's like mouth is moving. It's hilarious. It's both hilarious. It's like, what's funny is I remember seeing that scene as a kid and not being scared of it, but it's just being so bizarre and strange. It's like, what the fuck is
scared
this?
of it in like in the way that you're like, people would do this, and that's wild. Like, they built a set piece that is a giant pizza and put people's faces on it. Like, there's so few, like, that scene would be obviously like a CGI thing now in most instances.
It would look like shit now, honestly.
And it would look awful.
It would look horrible.
Yeah. So it's just.
And that pizza is from the Double Dare set.
Is it really?
No.
Oh man, I would have believed it.
Yeah, I've been watching Double Dare all week. That's funny you mentioned that. I've literally been watching old Double Dare episodes all week. I'm terrible.
It just made me think of it because everybody, there was that big pizza on Double Dare that everybody would comb through.
You're right. Well, I haven't got to that season yet, so I'm still way in the early years of Double Dare. The big pizza, I think, was a little like into the 90s.
Yeah, that was when the production
got better.
Yeah, the production value went up a little bit. Mark Summers started writing them big fat checks, and it was, well, I don't know if he was producing by that point, but I definitely was like, I was in it because spoiler alert for one of my later picks, we're going to talk a little bit about killer clowns, and of course Ernest Scared Stupid. You know, the creature, the troll from Ernest Scared Stupid is basically repurposed Kyoto Brothers props from Killer Clown. So I fully believed that was going to be the case, Steve. I would have believed it. I would have went hook, line, and sinker on that. But all right, which one do you guys want to go first? Which one when you throw into your first one?
I kind of want to go simply because it's funny enough that the scene is not featuring Freddy, but the movie features Freddy for a second.
All right,
and I'm going to talk about Critters 2.
Oh yes,
the main course. And we're going to talk about the Hungry Heifer scene, but there's a scene later in the film where Freddy actually pops up as a cardboard standee.
Yeah, dude, you want to hear something funny? That's one of my, like, I have that memory in my, I remember watching that on TV and always wishing that he turned into Freddy, because that's like the whole thing, is that whoever they look at, they can turn into. What are the bounty hunters, right?
Yeah, the bounty hunters are aliens from outer space, and they have the ability to turn into whoever they look at.
It would have been amazing if he turned into Freddy, because like New Line owned those cats. Like, you should have just had him as Robert Englund the whole movie. That would have been amazing. It would have been fucking perfect
with the big blaster and shit. Yeah.
Right?
Missed opportunity.
You gotta wonder if they tried for it and then just like it fell apart like in the last stages, because like the way it's filmed is like the bounty hunter isn't on screen while they're looking at the Freddy standee, so they were maybe thinking of isolating it later, and then
that would have been cool. Missed opportunity, man.
And then I think the gag would have been that Freddy would have been eaten by the critters, because shortly after that scene is when that bounty hunter gets killed. So like
Yeah, they could have totally done it then. Even if they had Robert Englund for like a day or two.
Yeah. You wonder if they were like setting it up and they were like, hey, if we can close this deal on this, maybe we can make this happen. But it didn't come to fruition.
And then the producer...
Misconnections, guys. Misconnections.
The producers of Nightmare, or the owners of Nightmare, probably backed out. They're like, well, we can't have Freddy get killed on screen. That sucks. You know? Not by the critters.
not by anybody but the critters.
Anybody but the critters.
Well, it was both New Line. So like, critters is like it's like sea level, I guess. They were just like, listen, Freddy's like our golden boy right now. We don't want him getting.
It's our number one.
We don't want him getting fucking murdered by a bunch of fuzzy little creatures. So
that's like Tony the Tiger, getting killed by like the Quisp alien or something like that. I don't know. Like, you can't let your number one guy go out like that. It's going to mess up the whole hierarchy.
Gets rocked by a multi-meal dino.
That's right.
But so the bounty hunters couldn't turn into Freddy, but they could turn into Eddie Deason. So that's, something.
That's important.
But
this scene is wild.
This scene rules. And it is.
It does.
And it's so much of just obvious Gremlins take off at this point.
Oh yeah, it's basically a diner version or a buffet version of the bar scene from Gremlins.
And so you get an early setup of the Hungry Heifer, which is like this small, it's a burger joint in a small town, and it's managed by Eddie Deason. But the critters are, the whole thing is they eat. All they do is eat. And they find themselves in the Hungry Heifer. They're taking over the salad bar. Remember when Wendy's had salad bars?
This is what I'm going to say is like that lettuce, that was some Taco Bell lettuce. That wasn't salad bar lettuce. That was like shredded, shitty Taco Bell lettuce. But it flies. It's like confetti. It just flies everywhere.
It looks better on camera.
Right. That has to be why they were shredded. So,
but so the bounty hunters come into town and they go into the Hungry Heifer because everybody's standing outside, screaming for help, asking for help. The bounty hunters go inside, and the critters are just tearing up the joint, going to town, and in the whole time you hear like little under the breath like jokes that they're making each other. Like, I'm gonna flip this.
Flipping the burgers. This is like the Munchies. Remember when we talked about Munchies when they had to have stole this from Critters. I mean, you don't really get it in Gremlins that much, but when they're like fighting or whatever, so there's a big chaos is ensuing. And in the background, you just hear one of them go, "Where are the Munchies?" This just reminded me of that. Like you just hear these little things in the background.
Yeah, and it goes throughout the whole movie, but it just carries carries the critters as like a funny kind of standout again from the Gremlins, but they're also more violent. The other thing about this scene though is just when both of the bounty hunters come in. They have these telescoping cannons, and then you just get it's like a funny visual joke of the one male bounty hunter extends his cannon, and then the other bounty hunter, who has taken the form of a female, extends her cannon.
Yeah.
And it seems to be just a little bit bigger, but
it's a little phallic. Yeah, the whole thing is a little. It's a very phallic joke for sure.
For sure.
And then the critters
Johnny
notice.
Steele in the second one? I forget. Is that actor came back right from the first one? That was like the Johnny Steele, like Power of the Night. That guy from the first one. It's him again in the second one, right?
So
one of the bounty hunters. I forget.
I believe the original bounty hunter came back, and then because the bounty hunters are named Ugg and Lee, which is good enough. And then the town drunk from the first one, who's now a bounty hunter, also came back.
Yes.
So
and I have to rewatch Critters, man. I have the box set. It's been a minute. It's been a while since I've watched all those.
I forgot how fun Critters 2 was.
Great.
I saw the first one not that long ago. Like I watched the first one when they did the the thing on was it Shudder? They did like the Shudder exclusive.
The scariest
Critters.
Scenes? Or
no, they did a Critters
TV show.
Oh,
they did it. Okay.
A series like that, probably a couple years ago now, or maybe even 3 years ago. But it was like not long after Shudder started.
It was the early years of Shudder. Yeah, I remember that. Wow, I forgot about that too.
Yeah,
poor Critters getting no love.
Man, it wasn't great. I'll be honest with you, but it did make me go back and watch the first Critters, and I didn't rewatch the second one until. Steve sent me his list, and this movie's so fucking fun.
It's so funny, just up and down. Like,
well, the one where
they're all fun for the most part.
When he blasts, so like Steve said, they got these like telescoping like blasters, which you think it's going to be like a Gatling gun, but they're like cannons. They're just blowing them up. And the one, it just like skims the top of his head, like, and just takes the hair off the top of his head.
Yeah.
He looks in the mirror and makes some little grumbling noise, and then it translates in subtitles to him looking in the mirror and going, bitchin'.
So silly.
This scene is such a concentrate of like gags really quickly, because you get that one. You get one where one of the critters gets blasted onto the flat top that another critter is cooking on, and he's like flipping burgers, and then he just starts pushing down and making smash burgers out of his buddy.
He's got like a spatula.
One's eyes bug out like a cartoon character, another like they're all freaking out, and then my favorite one is the one right after the scalping is one gets blasted into the deep fryer.
Oh, that's great, because they linger on it for a few seconds too.
Yeah, and it's just like this grossest, like they had to build a whole new puppet, but it's the grossest one because it has no skin, it's bright red, and it's just screaming.
All its fur's gone. Yeah. It's just literally looks like a chicken wing face, in there.
But,
poor critter. He got deep fried.
But
so good.
I put this one lower on my list though because even though it's funny and everything, it's an Easter film, so it's not a Thanksgiving film.
Is it really an Easter film?
It is an Easter film, because the whole conceit is the eggs get mistaken for Easter eggs.
Oh my God, you're right. I totally forgot about that portion.
And then you have the Easter bunny getting attacked. There's a guy playing an Easter bunny at a Sunday service.
Wow, I never realized that. Now I know what to cover during in April.
There you go. But
I forget if is Critters 2 the first time there was a giant critter?
I can't remember if it was the first one, but it does have the giant critter.
They all get together into a big ball.
Mm-hmm.
There's like then there's one there's a giant version of a critter.
You mean the large one? I was going to say, because they do form the ball in this one.
The ball
so there's a giant ball, and then there is a larger critter but it's actually one of the bounty hunters in disguise.
Oh, okay. I remember that vaguely. I remember there being just like a big critter. And the third one's the one that has Leonardo DiCaprio, right? If I remember correctly.
You could be right about that. I don't.
I'm pretty sure that Leonardo DiCaprio is either in 3 or because Brad Dourif is in the one that they're in space, and that's the 4th one, I think. And I actually really
that's the
like
4th
that one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure a little Leonardo DiCaprio is in. I think it's Critters 3.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I may never have seen that.
I don't think I've seen it either.
It's actually pretty fun from what I remember. It's been a while for me too, but it's a fun one. It's just fun to watch a movie where there's a really young Leonardo DiCaprio who went on to be this big actor. It's fucking hilarious.
This is like I'm surprised people don't talk about this more. And now I got to watch it because there's you have your what's her name from Friends who's in Leprechaun.
Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah.
Jennifer Aniston in Leprechaun. Of course, you have George Clooney in. Is that Return to Horror High?
Return to Horror High, yeah.
Yeah, so you have these A-list celebrities.
Return to the Killer Tomatoes.
Yeah, I was about to say Return to the Killer Tomatoes.
So you have these A-list. Yeah. And then what did I just watch? Oh, and then of course Johnny Depp in
Nightmare on Elm
Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
And Mariska Hargitay and Ghoulies. Don't ever forget Mariska Hargitay.
Oh,
yes, because when I think about those A-lists, I always think Mariska Hargitay.
It's crazy.
She's beautiful, Brian. Shut up.
She's my angel. You leave her out of this.
Oh man. That's funny.
This is a great underappreciated flick. It's super silly, but it's a blast.
They're all fun. All the critters movies are a good time. You know, actually, you guys have inspired me to go back and watch them all. So
there you go. We just took that time away from your life.
Oh man, I'm getting nothing done the next couple of weeks. So,
all right. What do you got? What's your first one, Louie?
So I went a little dark. Mine are like kind of casually going from like really rough to just really lighthearted. So my first pick is from the 1980 film Cannibal Holocaust. I'm assuming most people, if you're listening to this show, I'm sure. Have you guys covered Cannibal Holocaust out of curiosity?
We haven't covered it. No. Oddly enough, we haven't covered it.
So if you don't know Cannibal Holocaust, it's a really notorious video nasty from 1980 directed by Ruggero Deodato. He's, one of those Italian horror directors that directed a bunch of like really brutal. Most of his movies involve like rape and really dark shit, like
exploitation type of stuff.
A lot of exploitation stuff is what he's basically known for, and his most infamous film is Cannibal Holocaust. In a nutshell, I'm not gonna give a big breakdown of the movie, but it's about this rescue team from NYU who go to the Amazon to look for a group of documentary filmmakers. And they come across their tapes, or I should say film cans, because they have the actual film. This is 1980. And they take it back to NYU, watch it, and they see all the really dark, disturbing shit that happened to these documentary filmmakers, because there's some like weird thing where the NYU professors want to release this as like this documentary film to the public. They do
this like private viewing.
Yeah.
That's such a weird scene. Not
it is.
After they watch it, and then they just... The credits, there's no credits. It's just raw. And the guy just gets up and goes back to the phone. He's like, burn it, film or whatever.
It's fucking ridiculous. Yeah. It's funny too, because the funny thing about these movies, and I'll get into the actual scene in a sec, but the funny thing about these Italian movies in general, because even when you watch like Lucio Fulci shit and like even Dario Argento and his stuff, they're all dubbed. In English. So it's just, you can't take any of the acting serious, and they're trying to be, and I guess that's just with the times, you watch it now or in the last 20 years, and that's just how it is. Yeah. But I've always been a fan of Cannibal Holocaust. There's certain things about it I don't like, and I'll get into one of the big ones right now, which is my pick, and that's the murder, I guess, of the turtle. And and in a nutshell, the group of
in a
film, in a nutshell, the group of these filmmakers, they're hungry. They're in the Amazon. I forget if this is before or after they escape the tribe. They're just in the woods. A bunch of them die at this point.
Yeah, I think it's before, because they're still in pretty good spirits by this point. I think. Yeah,
because doesn't this either precedes or goes hand in hand when they kill the pig as well?
Yeah, they shoot the pig. So because the first animal to die is the muskrat in the film, or what is, I don't think it's actually a muskrat, but yeah, I'm glad you said that, because if your listeners don't know, this movie has a bunch of real animal mutilation in it. So trigger warning if that affects you. But yes, in this scene, this group, they're hungry and they find a large turtle and they decapitate it. They remove all the limbs. They de-shell it. And they fuck around with the intestines, ripping it all out. It's fucking disgusting. And they cook the turtle and eat it. Now, the reason why Ruggero Deodato, and he got in trouble because a lot of people behind so first things first, he had to go to court because they accused him of actually murdering people in this movie, because some of it, specifically the young lady on the pole,
who's impaled,
who's impaled through out of her mouth. That lady, through her, it looks realistic even now when you watch it.
Oh, it holds up. It's disturbing. Yeah,
it's really disturbing. But the reason they got away with this is because they actually ate all the animals that they slaughtered on film. So that was the loophole. And this is before PETA. Like, they'd never be able to do this in 2022. No. But this scene to me, and it's technically a scene of people eating, and they're doing it to eat the turtle. But this scene to me is just, I think everyone remembers Cannibal Holocaust for this scene. And
for the shock
else.
value.
Yeah. And it sucks because it's actually a pretty good movie. Like, minus some of the hokey overdubbing, it's not a bad, it's shocking, but it's a well-made movie, and it kind of birthed the whole found footage thing.
Yeah.
But the turtle scene itself, and I have a funny story I want to tell you guys, but the turtle scene itself I remember seeing it. So whenever I watch Cannibal Holocaust, I watch a version with no animal cruelty. I have like one of the Blu-rays, and it's not a movie I casually put on like a Saturday afternoon to watch with my Cheerios.
Making a cup of coffee, sit there, pop in Cannibal Holocaust.
But if I were to watch it, or like I'm with someone that's never seen it, I usually put on the version. But the version I watch has all the animal stuff removed from it because I can see, which is, I guess, what does that tell you about me? I can watch all the fake human murders in it, all the crazy shit, but I can't watch the animal cruelty that's in it. But it's just a personal choice for me when it comes to like this scene itself. And again, I think most people just remember the movie for this scene. But the funny story I wanted to tell you was, so I used to go to these screenings out here in New York. So they had a theater. Unfortunately, it closed down a few years ago called the Sunshine Theater. It's in like the Lower East Side. And they always
I've heard of the Sunshine Theater.
Yeah, really infamous theater. They always had midnight screenings on 35 millimeter print. And I used to go with a group of friends of mine. We would go see stuff like Evil Dead and Maniac Cop and shit like that. And they had a Cannibal Holocaust release for the Blu-ray when it had first come out, and it was like Grindhouse was releasing, and they had a screening. Yeah. And we're all like, I don't know what this is going to be like to watch Cannibal Holocaust and this specific scene on a giant screen, not at home where you can kind of like close. And then the music makes it worse in Cannibal Holocaust. Way worse.
It's honestly, that is the part that sticks with me the most, because you're seeing all this fucked up stuff, but it's this almost like dreamy, like, I don't know, how else do you describe it? Like, I don't know.
It's almost like an upbeat, especially the opening title. It's like very upbeat, but it's not an upbeat film at all.
It feels like you are starting like an educational film that you would watch in like elementary school.
That's a good way of describing it. Yeah. And that's kind of, I think, what they wanted it to feel obviously like a documentary. That was kind of what they were going for.
You feel like you're about to watch Voyage of the Mimi, and then like some wild shit starts happening.
And it's that whole subgenre of that Mondo Cane, like all those type of movies kind of feel that way. And Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Ferox. And this, honestly, the cannibal genre of these type of films can fit into films about food, technically, because they're fucking cannibals. There's a lot of cannibalism in Cannibal Holocaust. But yeah, my story. So I'm at the Sunshine Theater. I'm with a couple of my friends. We went to like a bar beforehand. We had a couple of drinks, and then we went to see. You have to have a few drinks before going to see Cannibal Holocaust.
Right.
And we go and we're sitting there, and the theater packed, sold out screening for Cannibal Holocaust. And I'm like, all right, we're sitting there. The turtle scene happens. And we're all, I look away. I was like, oh God, I can't sit through the scene. I've only ever seen it in its entirety when I was like 16, 17, when you're watching all that crazy shit when you're a kid. And I can't really sit through it now. But it popped up. I looked away a little bit. Out of nowhere, the aroma of vomit. It's just, it fills the theater. And we're like, dude, someone threw up in this theater, which added to how fucking horrible the movie is and this scene. And I don't mean horrible, the movie's bad, just the horrible shit that's in it. And we leave the theater after the screening, and we see a trail of vomit leaving the theater to the restroom right outside. Fucking hilarious. And I was like, wow, whoever this person was not prepared to see this nasty turtle mutilation.
Someone's friend brought their friend and was like, it's fine, you'll be fine. And then, it's weird because like, I remember seeing it the first time, and it's certainly shocking. Yeah. But like, it's wild because, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I still live in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Very rural environment. I grew up hunting. Yeah. I've gutted many animals, all different manner of animals, deers and squirrels and all types of stuff. So it's not that it's such a cultural thing. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Because I remember going like, oh, that's not like, you don't enjoy watching it, but like, yeah, I have pulled the guts out of animals before, you know, when I was hunting as a kid. I don't really hunt anymore, but I used to, or even gutting a fish or something like that.
Yeah.
But like, I always wonder, like, if there's probably barely enough people in my town to pack out a movie theater at all, let alone packed theater to watch this movie. But I imagine it would hit very different.
Yeah.
For all these rednecks out where I live, they'd just be like, "Oh, that looked like pretty good eating." Like it wouldn't bother them at all.
Listen, man, if you think about it, so this screening was probably over a decade ago. So, you know, and it's in New York City, Lower East Side. You got the hipstery kids and stuff. You know, people that want to kind of go watch, you know, Cannibal Holocaust from 1980.
Yeah, the shock. They're there for the shock value. Yeah.
And, you know, I guarantee there were a lot of people that had never seen this movie or just heard about all the animal mutilation stuff. Oh, that's nothing. That's like something you'd see on National Geographic. But I don't know. I think it's the combination of the music and just like the fact that they did this. And, you know, they killed this poor turtle. You know, I'm a big animal lover. I like it. For me, it's just something I'm just a personal thing for me. So it's like watching this. I just feel bad. Like I feel bad for the turtle. I feel bad for
it's like a big turtle.
Dude,
too. You gotta
it's
like a giant snapping turtle.
And I'm a huge like monkey fan, and they murder a monkey in this movie too, like a little monkey. Brutal. So it's like, you know, because apparently, you know, monkey brains is a delicacy in the Amazon where they were. So like seeing that shit to me, and I get it, for other people culturally, that's, you know, that's what they eat.
A monkey's rough though, because a monkey looks too much like a person.
It's like a little person.
You know, yeah, it's not good.
It's rough. To me, the monkey is worse than the turtle. Like the monkey 100%. Fucked me up more when I first saw it. The pig, honestly, the pig didn't bother me. That doesn't. I'm like, whatever. They fucking shot a pig, whatever. Even the muskrat was whatever. The turtle and the monkey that's what really gets me in this movie. You know, and they ate them, so I gotta respect it. You know, whatever. You guys actually ate the animal. They say they did, and you see them eating it, so they had to have, you know.
They found their loophole, but like you said, they couldn't do it again. And I think partially of how they got away with it was like, you know, it was Italian filmmakers in South America. So like,
Hey,
who's gonna prosecute them?
Right.
You know what I mean?
In 1979, when they were filming this, where I'm sure the laws were, you could probably get away with worse shit. In all honesty, so.
Yeah, this was some guerrilla filmmaking kind of in that way, but
yeah, that's my pick. Cannibal Holocaust and the turtle scene. So
yeah, so it gets lighter from there, is what you're saying.
yes. That's my only.
That's the appetizer to the dinner.
Yes, that is the appetizer. 100%.
That's like bringing out pigs in a blanket for the appetizer. And everybody's like, I'm full now.
It's funny, but when you reached out to me about being a guest on the show, and you're like, hey, pick food scenes or scenes where people are eating, you know, in a horror movie, and this is the first thing that came to mind. Cannibal Holocaust, the turtle scene. Again, you could use the whole film as an example of just horror and people eating, technically. So the turtle is the main course of that film, though. So
yeah, that's true. Well, listen, we've got a main course there. Let your boy jump into some dessert. I'm going over to dessert next, and I'm going to talk about really broadly like an entire film, because it really focuses around a particular food item. I'm talking about 1985's The Stuff, which is one of my favorite movies, period. Like, I know that sounds dramatic for such a silly movie, but I adore Michael Moriarty. He hit this scene. So I love, like, everyone, listen, from Pittsburgh, Tom Atkins is my boy. I've watched him play Scrooge in A Christmas Carol at the Pittsburgh CLO since I was little. You know, I'm a big Tom Atkins fan. Like I say, he's a hometown boy, but I don't know why people don't give Michael Moriarty even just a scrap of the notoriety in the horror community that Tom Atkins gets, because, and I get it, more people know him from like his later acting career when he was on like, he was on some like crime drama show. I forget what he was on.
I forget too.
But Mo Rutherford is one of the greatest characters in horror history. I will say that right now. That scene, now this isn't this scene has very little to do with the eating aspect of it. But the scene where he walks onto the yacht and he's being paid to basically do like corporate espionage for all these ice cream magnates, and he goes in and he has a sweaty palm, another sweaty palm. He's taking our hands, and he's just big dogging all these bajillionaires on their yacht, and then eventually punches out their security guard. The whole scene's just fucking magic. Michael Moriarty is fantastic in this. This and Q the Winged Serpent, like, are two of my
that movie's awesome too.
favorite performances. But anyway, if you haven't seen this, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, an interesting way to think about his character in this is like he's playing Fletch in a horror movie.
Yeah, basically.
A little
bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. A little bit.
I didn't even think of that. Wow.
And if you don't believe me, go watch the new Fletch movie with John Hamm in it. It's the same thing.
Really? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just walking around big dogging people.
Yeah, big dogging being weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Michael Moriarty's he is weird. Like, it's not like he's John Hamm, who's like, John Hamm's a fantastic actor, don't get me wrong, but John Hamm's like this like ridiculously handsome, debonair, kind of guy acting a little bit weird. Like, Michael Moriarty, you can tell he's regular old weird in real life and just happens to be a great actor too. So he just embodies this like strangeness, like so much. Like, you could literally see him being like a charismatic private eye or something like that in real life. But yeah, so anyway, if you haven't seen this stuff, just, basically it's about this particular food product that some people come in contact while, I think, drilling for oil. And it's basically, it looks like a cross between Cool Whip and Marshmallow Fluff. And it's this like delicious dessert-like treat that is basically addictive, delicious, nutritious, blah, 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 0 calories. So it's like this whole thing where these, as you might imagine, it spins into this whole thing about corporate greed,
of course. And
Michael Moriarty, kind of getting revenge on these like, greedy corporate entities who are poisoning the entire country, the entire world, really, with, they call it the stuff, and there's commercials interstitched into it for the stuff, and it's fantastic. But the one scene I'll talk about, because people, you eat it, and then once it's kind of inside you, it kind of morphs and takes over your brain, and I won't spoil it too much because it's fantastic. But the scene that I'm going to call out is not necessarily one of the scenes where they're eating it, but it's with another dessert magnate, which is Chocolate Chip Charlie. And this scene where they're basically trying to get the information out over the radio of the danger of the stuff, and Chocolate Chip Charlie's face, he's been taken over by the stuff, and now in one of the most ballsy, weird, lingering practical effects shots that I can think of, Chocolate Chip Charlie's like throat expands, his jaw stretches, and his entire head turns. It looks like something that would be in Nightmare on Elm Street
Reminds
film
me of
or something
Thing
like
a little bit too.
Yeah.
Like,
it
a
does,
little
yes.
bit, yeah.
It very much does, yeah. Where you're just getting this like super grotesque body horror practical effect in a movie that was otherwise pretty mild up to this point. And that's like, you get more stuff like that as you go, but like nothing like this has happened up until this point.
Yeah.
So when you're watching this movie, you're just like, oh, this is just kind of this quirky movie about, they're eating this goo, this marshmallow fluff, and it does something to you and it controls your brain. No, it also will stretch your head out and turn you into a fucking monster. And it just blindsides you. And he's like, it all starts coming out of his mouth. And
it's a great scene.
This whole scene could fall into this category, but that's my favorite part in this particular, like that scene, even though there's much more eating scenes in the movie, that's my favorite scene in a movie that could just entirely fall into this category, because it's all about a very specific food item.
Wasn't it yogurt? It wasn't yogurt that they used. I forget what I read online.
I think they actually used like Cool Whip or marshmallow fluff or something like that. Like it's not as sticky and stringy as marshmallow fluff, but it's thicker and denser than like whipped cream.
Yeah.
Maybe they also used just like shaving cream because
it looks more like shaving cream, but they're always. You see a lot of people eating
it. Yeah, so they had to use a substitute for the people the actors that were eating it, I guess. So it must have been something.
But it does look like it.
Maybe anything that was coming out of like the Charlie, practical head. Maybe that was shaving cream. I don't know. Everybody has different photography techniques. Yeah.
Such a fun movie.
Isn't his like tongue fly? Something like his eyeballs pop or something like that?
His
eyeballs bulge out. And it's fucking... It's a good one. Like I said, it just throws you for a loop because you don't expect it either.
It is a pretty slow-paced movie, too, when you think about it. Not much happens like the first 40 minutes of that movie, so... and I'm surprised people don't mention that. Too. I'm surprised more people don't mention that. Like, even though it's technically like a body horror film, I'm surprised more people don't. Because it technically kills you after you eat it, right? So shit happens to you afterwards. So I'm just surprised you don't hear more people lump that in with other like body horror movies.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. It's for whatever reason, it doesn't get as much credit because I think it's like you watch the first. I have a theory. This is completely off topic, but I have a theory that the more talk value movies get is just based on how fast they start. Like there's so many movies that I've watched that I'm like, this isn't a great movie, but it gets talked about a lot because it hits the ground running and you see so much in the first 20 minutes. Like so many movies that are slow burns don't get that much credit because no one has the patience to sit through a lot of movies. Like people just don't have as much of a attention span.
Yeah. That's what they say. Like in screenwriting, they're always like the first 30 minutes of your script. If something doesn't happen in those first 30 minutes to just grasp someone's attention, then you're going to lose your audience. That's what they say. Like that's what I've heard. Wow.
I'd be interested. How many, did you guys ever see this stuff before knowing it was a horror movie?
No.
Okay. Because I'm wondering if it's kind of like, so like if you saw Predator without like seeing anything, you thought you were getting an Arnold action film, but then it turns into this sci-fi monster movie.
Right.
So I wonder if like the stuff was kind of trying to do the same thing. Like you think you're getting like kind of this detective film. But then it turns into, this body horror nightmare.
You might be right. I'd be curious to see how it was promoted.
Yeah.
Because obviously I don't. I mean, this came out the year I was born, so like obviously I didn't see it in the theaters. But you might be right about that.
I'm just wondering if that was like the intention, even if it wasn't marketed that way.
I'm sure they marketed it as like a horror movie, but there was probably some sort of because to me the stuff can kind of fit in the same category as The Blob. Like people always go The Blob versus The Stuff. Like who would win? What creature would win or whatever. Yeah. So like, I feel like those type of films, especially like the 80s Blob, where you find out the Blob's actually an experiment, is not an alien. So I feel like The Stuff is, and what year was The Stuff again? I
Stuff
forget.
is 85. Yeah.
Wow, it was 85. Okay. Wow, 85? I could have sworn it was earlier than that. Crazy.
Yeah. It does feel like a 70s movie in a lot of ways.
Well, it's Larry Cohen too, right? The director.
It is Larry Cohen.
So, makes sense. I feel like all his stuff is always dated because even Q obviously inspired by like old monster movies just with the effect of the actual like creature and stuff.
Yeah, it looks like it's from 1969.
Yeah. Crazy. Great movie though. Both of those are great.
Yeah. Just one last note I would have is I would love to see a remake of this, but it has to be very specific. It has to be done by Paul Verhoeven.
Oh wow!
Just because of like all of the anti-corporatism and like the weird commercials that are interstitched into this, I'd love to see like almost a RoboCop Starship Troopers version of this film. So
The Stuff and RoboCop, I mean, that's a match made in heaven. I mean, how does that not make a bajillion dollars?
Somehow he'll squeeze in a scene of like men and women just naked together in a locker room. He always loves scenes like that, like Starship Troopers and RoboCop. He's always got men and women just naked, just shooting the shit.
Co-ed butts.
Amazing. Yes. So
Oh man. All right, Steve, what do you got?
So mine is moving along the tracks of body horror. I picked 2006 Slither.
Oh yeah. That's a gross fucking movie.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I don't know if James Gunn was intending to this to be like a precursor to like a feeder fetish or not.
Yeah.
But like there's definitely things that would probably suggest that was on his mind, but it was maybe too esoteric at the time. There weren't enough like My 1,000-Pound Sisters TV shows for people to get what a feeder fetish is.
I didn't even think of that. That's
but it's
crazy.
The whole the film is actually also kind of funny because like compare it to Critters 2. Critters 2 is a small town, and everybody in the town is they're kind of upright. They're upstanding citizens. It's kind of got that corny charm to it.
Yeah.
This movie is also a small town, and everybody's fucked up. Like everybody, like people are just like unpleasant. They're miserable. They're poor. They have like deformities, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so like there's graffiti everywhere. So it takes that small town monster movie and just turns it on its head by making everybody unlikable. But
yeah, this is such a like the cast in this movie is such an anomaly. And I know like it was James Gunn and stuff, like, he had a name even, going into this, but how did he get some of these people is my question, because this is like such a horror movies, like a horror fan's horror movie in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Like it, I don't want to jump too much ahead, but I'm just curious, like how he got this cat. Like, how do you get Elizabeth Banks? How do you like Michael Rooker? I get it. Like he wasn't quite as big in 2006 as he, because he hadn't been on The Walking Dead yet. Yeah. And like, I think a lot of people met Michael Rooker from The Walking Dead. But like Nathan Fillion even, like where did he get these people? Like, how did he get these people?
He's like still friends. He's like friends with these guys. They're like, even the Suicide Squad, they're both in that movie. Yeah, and they're friends of. So like either he must have just
maybe they had a relationship before this.
Then that's what I'm thinking. Because now they're bigger deals, but I'm guessing at the time they were just his friends. And he was like, "Hey, you want to be in this movie? I like working with you." Boom, there you go.
So he was a writer on a film called The Specials, which had a whole bunch of other people like that. Like it not. Didn't have Nathan Fillion and everything, but like that's kind of like his first movie, I would say, was like his big break because it was like a Rob Lowe movie, and he probably met a lot of people through that. But then he did some work on 13 Ghosts as a writer, and then he was a writer on the Scooby-Doo movies.
Okay.
So he probably like just from those inroads, he probably met a lot of the same people, even though like none of the actors and actresses we're talking about were in those films. But
Jenna. I forgot Jenna Fisher was in this movie.
He was married to her.
Yeah, at one
point.
Oh,
I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, he was married.
Yeah, but when this was, I mean, she was already on. When did The Office start? I don't know. My wife would kill me for not knowing that.
I think it was early in The Office. I think The Office was 04, 05. So I think
that sounds about right.
So I think it was, but it was still early in that show's run. So I guess it was
production would have been already underway before before that show blew up.
Right. Yeah, but I think they were still married at this point, probably. So that's why she just, he was able to get her as a pop-up cameo. But I think, as far as like Michael Rooker, he probably just respected him really as like an actor from like Mississippi Burning and everything. And just,
he's an incredible actor.
So he just wanted to bring him on. Because, I mean, in this film, he's playing a bad guy, very much. Just like unlikable from the get go.
He's really good at playing a role like that. So
he's so good at being just like an arrogant,
just an asshole. Yeah, that's basically. Well, Henry's like his big thing. I think most people, especially if you're a horror fan, like you always think of Henry when you see Michael Rooker.
Oh my God, he's terrible. Even in like he plays in Mallrats. He plays the asshole guy in Mallrats.
Yeah, I forgot about that. He's bald in that, completely bald in that movie. I forgot. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, he's a dickhead in that too. Yeah. Yeah,
he's the one eating the
pretzels,
pretzels. Yeah.
But so Slither it's very much in line with like these older sci-fi horror films where a meteor crashes the Earth and a monster comes out of the meteor, but it just takes everything to a fucking extreme with that. And the one scene I wanted to focus on the most was basically the scene where they find the womb and the woman who's been turned into a womb. And Michael Rooker, it gets infected by the monster, and he needs to find a womb to propagate the monsters further. So he takes this woman that he's been cheating on his wife with, hides her in a barn, and begins stuffing her with meat.
Yeah.
It's fucking gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so gross.
So gross.
It's funny. I mean, it's played as like a black comedy scene kind of thing. And the whole movie, I guess, is, but it's such a gross scene.
It's so gross. And they find her, and she's blown up far beyond like a Violet Beauregard. Like she is just. She's like, have you ever seen Strange Brew
with the McKenzie brothers, Bob and Doug McKenzie?
Yeah.
You know when he goes into the tank and drinks all the beer, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta piss."
Yeah.
You know, and he's like giant. Imagine that if it was like not cartoonish and really gross, and he was laying on his stomach.
It's a pretty gnarly effect too. Just seeing her, like her face is this big. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So
I wonder like how much of that. Well, like obviously the makeup on her face was practical, so I wonder how far the practical extended.
Yeah,
you know, because at some point, like it does begin to blend in with like a CGI. Because like when she begins to rip, that's definitely CGI.
It's very CGI. Yeah.
And then you have all
she
the
starts to rupture and
you have all these
nasty.
worms that come out, and the worms jump into
gross.
people's mouths.
very CGI worm. I mean, it's almost reminiscent of The Mist a little bit in that image.
Night of the Creeps too, a little bit. It reminds me, but all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
slugs.
I didn't see about that.
Yeah. Speaking of Tom Adkins,
This movie steals so much from other movies. Because I mean, like you have the monster from outer space, which would have been the Blob, the little wormy guys, which are like Night of the Creeps. The ending of the movie is basically Society with the shunting.
Yeah,
pretty much.
the shunting.
and then he even has like little shots in the movie. Like there's the one female hero, she's in a bathtub with the worm crawling through the bathtub, and that's Nightmare on Elm Street. And then there's even a shot that's reminiscent of The Shining with breaking through the door, but it's not like played that way. But if you look at it, you go, "Oh, that's Jack Nicholson."
Yeah, it's very much a love letter to horror. I mean, specifically like sci-fi horror, but just horror as a genre. And there's even some cameos of like horror personalities and famous horror people. And I think Lloyd Kaufman pops up.
Of course, he's popped up in every James Gunn film.
He worked for Troma, I think, for a long time. James Gunn started in Troma, if I remember correctly, right?
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, he was the writer on Terra Firma and I believe Romeo and Juliet.
Okay.
And then I haven't heard Terra Firma in years. I forgot about that movie.
Steve will always champion a Troma flick if given the opportunity.
Oh my God. Wow.
Brian is the full moon side of the show. I'm the Troma side of the show.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Both sides of the shitty spectrum. You got
Absolutely.
The shitty and the shitty
it's a shit nickel.
Yeah.
It's a nickel somebody just pulled out of their ass, and one side is Steve and one side
Someone
is me.
always loses in that situation.
Heads or tails, you lose every time.
Yeah, exactly.
But I didn't realize this. I was just looking as you were talking about it. Apparently, where does Rob Zombie pop up?
So he plays I saw it on just the IMDb going through, but it says he's playing Dr. Carl, which is just a throwaway character. Like at one point, Michael Rooker lies about he's becoming more deformed in the movie, and he lies and he says he got a bee sting.
His face is
all fucked up. He got a bee sting and he went to Dr. Carl. And then Elizabeth Banks calls to confirm with Dr. Carl. That's all it was.
And then that's when she's like, she realizes that something is fucked up going on.
It's just
when
his
they're
voice
in the house.
then, right?
It's just his voice. Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. So it was just a voice. I was going to say, I remember Lloyd Kaufman. I do not remember Rob Zombie.
Remember seeing him on camera.
Zombie in a movie.
I was going to say, if Rob Zombie played a doctor, I feel like I would remember.
Right. right.
The worst casting choice ever. Rob Zombie as a doctor with his dreads and stuff.
Imagine you go into a pediatrician's office and Rob Zombie comes out. Like, you're going to be like, listen, you could have all the diplomas in the world. I think I'm going to go somewhere else.
Is that a better or worse doctor than Dr. Corey Feldman in Citizen Toxic, the Toxic Avenger 4?
That era, Corey Feldman, they're equal.
Yeah.
For me.
I don't know.
Because you're like that guy does meth.
I think I think in that case I'd be veering more towards Rob Zombie. He seems like, honestly, Rob Zombie just seems like a normal dude. He just likes horror movies and like screaming.
He seems more responsible than the Corey Feldman.
Yeah, he just likes to scream motherfucker and constantly and just like likes horror movies.
Yeah. Just a couple other notes on like eating scenes in Slither, though. You have a deer eating people and attacking Nathan Fillion. And then you have another scene where more people are infected and they're turned into wombs. And you see kind of before they become the big balloon people, you see like kind of the intermediate. And it's like 4 people locked in an attic and they're just like chowing down on humans and animals and steaks.
Yeah.
And they have like these giant distended bellies.
Yeah.
And like everybody, it's grosser. Like everybody kind of becomes a zombie because they're tied to the interconsciousness of the alien, but they also are aware of themselves. So it's like worse than being a zombie because
they're self-aware of what's happening.
Yeah,
and
like
they're conscious and they
they hate that they're doing it.
Well, so, that's the most disturbing part about the giant, womb scene with the woman who, I forget her name, isn't it? Like,
I think her character's name is Brenda.
Brenda. Okay, I was going to say it's like Kathy or something like that. Anyway, she's this giant like wall of meat, basically. You can just see her face, and she's obviously like, this is horrible, something terrible's happening, help me, but all she can say is, I'm starving, please feed me, you know what I mean? Like, and there's like some rotting meat and she's like, please just push it over here, I need it. It's the disturbing part is how she's still desperate to eat.
There's also just periods of time where like people lose themselves and they become possessed by the need. And like the early version you see is like Michael Rooker in the grocery store. He's standing over a meat counter and he's just saying to himself over and over, he's just like meat. Like it's just coming out loud.
It's been so long since I've watched Slither. That's another one. You guys are just, I'm like, it's been a few years. I haven't watched Slither in a while. So, but it's funny. I vividly remember like the image of her blown up in the marketing. Like, like I remember being like, what the fuck is this movie about? Like, I just remember saying that to myself just when it was coming out in theaters and stuff. I definitely have to revisit that one as well.
The CGI isn't perfect anymore. I mean, it wasn't perfect at the time, so like it's still noticeable, but there's still like a lot of great practical, and it's still really fun. So
there's
go check it out.
Another movie that I think is it Shivers, the David Cronenberg movie that's like little slug creatures that are like making people nymphomaniacs or some shit like that. I forget what it is. And I think there is like a scene where Barbara Steele or somebody and like one of those little creatures is in the bathtub as well, and like.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so it just came into mind now as I watched that recently. And I was like,
that one is like an underappreciated Cronenberg flick.
I'm pretty sure it's Shivers. It's either, I think it's Shivers, where they're in the apartment building.
I think it's called You're right. It's got some cool posters too. I think it's called Shiver. Just Shiver?
Shiver or Shivers, one of the two.
I've only seen it, I think. Yeah. So
I watched it recently, like literally a month or two ago. I actually watched it. And like thinking about it now, I was like, oh shit. James Gunn must have been an influence as well. I'm guessing on Slither. So if you think about it, so
did they remake it? Holy shit!
They might have. I'm sure it's terrible.
Yeah, there's one from 2012 too.
No, it's Shivers.
It's
from
Shivers.
75.
Yeah, 75.
Yeah,
okay.
I know. So Shivers, the Cronenberg one was 70, where it was from the 70s, but there is a movie called Shiver from 2012.
Oh.
Streaming free on Tubi, guys.
There you go.
Shout out to Tubi once again, our unofficial sponsor.
Stupid Tubi. Why don't you sponsor us? We love you so much.
All right. Whose was that? Steve, that was yours, right?
That was mine.
We're back around to Louie.
So my next pick is from a movie I think is underrated and I watched a million times when I was a kid, and it's not technically, it's horror, black comedy. It's in that vein, I guess, adjacent to horror because people do get killed and there's some scary, weird shit in it. And that's the film Nothing But Trouble from 1991. I'm glad you guys are familiar with this movie because you'd be surprised. I talk to people, they're like, what movie is that?
I had it on my list.
Oh, yeah. This was one that when Steve actually, when he originally sent me his list, after you had sent me your list. And I sent it to Steve before he sent me yours. He had this scene on his list too.
Perfect. It's a movie that I remember seeing 100 times on HBO when I was a kid. It was always on, and I just remember not knowing the name of it for years. I was maybe like 8 when I finally realized it was called Nothing But Trouble. And if your listeners are not familiar with this movie, it's basically about a group of yuppies, Chevy Chase and Demi Moore. I think he's like a banker or something like that, I believe. Or
he's like a financial, because the scene's like he keeps calling him a banker, but he's like, I'm a financial publicist or publisher or something like that.
She's a lawyer, if I remember correctly. And they're driving to Atlantic City with a client of hers, and they're caught speeding in the town of, is it Volkvania? How do you pronounce it?
Vulcanvania.
Vulcanvania. And they get pulled over. It's kind of a, standard, kind of, it always reminded me of Rocky Horror. Like your car breaks down in this weird town and they end up in the home of this weird family that the head of the household is. He's 106 years old. Is Alvin Volkheiser? I'm probably butchering the names. And basically in that film, that's the story. They're in this house and they don't want to be there. He hates bankers. He's keeping them there to kind of torture them.
Because like a banker fucked up his family fortune or something at one
along
point.
Those.
Yeah,
it's really deep for a stupid movie like this. There's a lot of subtext to it, and there's a lot of characters. John Candy's in it. He's probably one of my favorite parts because he has like 2 or 3 roles in this.
He plays multiple people. He plays a brother and sister. Or are they cousins or something? I forget.
Brother and sister.
Yeah, they're brother and sister.
Yeah, and then there's Bobo. And I forget the other 2 younger siblings or whatever. I think one of them might be Dan Aykroyd. I forget.
Yeah, and Dan Aykroyd plays the like patriarch too, the judge,
Alvin,
whatever his name is.
Alvin Volkenheiser or whatever.
I mean, he's like unrecognizable with all the prosthetics and stuff, but yeah.
And so in the scene there, and I feel like again, this movie definitely. I think like Rocky Horror was it because I was going to pick Rocky Horror and the dinner scene in that because I love Rocky Horror Picture Show, and there's a dinner scene in this, and it was really reminiscent of the scene in Rocky Horror where they're having a dinner and it's awkward because obviously they don't want to be there. Like the main characters we're following don't want to be there, but they're kind of stuck there. And in the scene, because the judge, he's really gross, he's old, they're meeting all the weird family members. And they've been meeting them little by little. I believe, if I remember correctly, this is when they're introduced to John Candy as the daughter or the granddaughter. And this is where you see he's playing 2 roles. And in the scene,
he's trying to like marry her off too. Isn't he?
He's constantly pushing her to Chevy Chase, like, "Hey, she's a great girl.
She's available." And it's just John Candy in a wig, basically.
Yeah, and I remember she's like a mechanic, and he's really pushing that. He's like, she works hard for her money or whatever. She's really good with her
she's a
hands.
Provider and all that.
It's fucking great. And listen, before I get into the scene, my favorite part of this is obviously Dan Aykroyd. And just Chevy Chase because he is so dry and sarcastic. Because this is when like Chevy Chase, like around the same time like Memoirs of an Invisible Man, where he wasn't playing the type of roles he was playing before. It was
he was not the buffoon. No, he was trying to be the straight man.
It was a weird transition in his career at this point. But I love this version of Chevy Chase. But in the scene. You've got the judge, you've got all the family members there, you've got Demi Moore, you've got their 2 friends who I recognize one of the actors, I forget his name though. He's been in a bunch of stuff. And her client, and they're sitting there and it's
Taylor
dinner.
Negron.
Yes, there you go. And they're
he's he's a forgotten because I think he passed away.
Wasn't he in Fast Times at Ridgemont High too?
Yeah, he was in. He passed away. I feel like not too terribly long ago.
Less than a decade ago, probably.
If you saw him and you were alive in the 90s, you're going to immediately be like, I know that guy.
Yeah. And in this scene, basically, they're sitting there. They're anxious. They want to leave. And it's dinner time. So he comes down, Dan Aykroyd, the judge character, comes down from the ceiling like this weird music playing. And the daughter, his granddaughter, I should say, it's time to serve dinner. So she comes out with probably the grossest hot dogs I have ever seen. They're gray. They've got like these little, they look almost like they're made of, they almost look like condoms in reality, like filled with shit. Yeah,
they've got like this thick casing on the outside. Weird. They're like skin colored. It's so strange.
And the casing's like hanging off, and it's just so unpleasant.
It's really gross. It's really fucking
They're
nasty.
all like 18 inches long. They're these giant boiled sausages.
And he's using like Wonder Bread as the bun too. It's like that's what I love about the scene specifically are the small details. My favorite thing of the scene is the warm Hawaiian punch. That's probably the thing I most remember, because Chevy Chase has a scene where, you know, after the judge pours himself a glass, he sticks like this spout into it and then hands it to Chevy Chase. And he's like, you know, there's nothing better at the end
of
a
wine decanter. Yeah,
it's fucking nasty.
No, actually, the spout is something that you would put into an oil can.
Oh, is that what it
is? It's meant for oil cans.
That's
so like
hilarious.
it plays into that junkyard.
The junkyard feel of their entire like home.
Right.
But Chevy Chase has this line where he's like, you know, there's nothing better at the end of a long day on the road than a nice warm glass of Hawaiian punch. That line alone is like the best thing in that movie. Like, I just love that line and his delivery of that line, because when you really think about it, warm Hawaiian punch is fucking disgusting.
It sounds like you're just drinking syrup. Yeah.
And it sums up this scene so much, like the combination of the warm Hawaiian punch, these gross gray hot dogs, and then on top of that, there's two more things in this scene I want to add. There's basically the condiments come out on this like little train set that's constantly spinning around the table, and you have to catch it. It only stops for the judge. The rest of them have to kind of like somehow get their hands on ketchup and mustard. And then probably the weirdest scene, and it's so random, but the whole movie's fucking weird, and that's what's so brilliant about it, is there's a scene where Chevy Chase, you've got the judge, Dan Aykroyd, as this 106-year-old man eating the nasty ass hot dog. Chevy Chase
wrapped in bread.
And the Wonder Bread. He looks over at the judge and he's chowing on this, got ketchup and mustard all over his face, and his nose turns into a dick for a single frame or two, like 2 frames. And Chevy Chase blinks, but he's like, wait a second, did this guy's nose just turn into the head of a dick? And it's just so odd. It's fucking bizarre.
I want to know who wrote this scene. It's fucking chaos.
It's Dan Aykroyd wrote this scene.
Yeah, okay. Dan Aykroyd is a full-on insane person, and he probably was on so much coke when he wrote this scene.
Dude, it's so odd because the scene is awkward to begin with for the main characters because they don't want to be there, and it's just gross and disgusting. And then for his nose to just turn into a dick while he's eating a fucking long phallic hot gray hot dog. It's just so weird. It's odd.
So on top of that, there's 2 other things.
I might have missed.
Well, there's one other thing going on.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on. But there's like one other thing going on. When he's eating the hot dog, he's actually looking down at Demi Moore. Like he's trying to do it seductively. As like, but he's like getting condiments all over his face, and the hot dog is gross. And he's trying to like, you know, be seductive towards Demi Moore, who is just appalled.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I could be wrong about this, but I thought I read that the original intention was his nose was supposed to be a dick the entire time.
Oh, it kind of looks dickish when you really look at it.
It looks dickish,
or whatever, clef in it or whatever. So it makes sense.
So, but I think in order to maintain a non-R rating, they made him change it.
It's only a dick in one scene.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just so weird because it's like one shot of just his nose being a dick, and then Chevy Chase is the one that sells it just by like, wait, did I just see that? Or
doing the double take.
Yeah. That was going crazy, and I'm like, it's just such a bizarre scene. It's great though.
It's so weird that Dan Aykroyd, like when you look at like, you know, I mean, obviously a lot of us first time with Dan Aykroyd was in Ghostbusters and you always think of him as like the straight man kind of, but he's the most fucking bizarre human being in the world. And his brain is just so like, he's just such a bizarre guy. This scene reminds me of like, if you've not seen this, you said Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is absolutely like, it reminds me of that scene from Rocky Horror Picture Show combined with the dinner scene from Texas Chainsaw Massacre combined with Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Yeah. Because like there's this whole weird like these Rube Goldberg almost mechanical things that are happening. He lowers down from the ceiling. He of course has trains that take the condiments around. He's got all these little contraptions and stuff that like it's such a bizarre scene.
And I think it plays into the scene because I'm pretty sure Chevy Chase's character is like, oh, you have so much metal, you can build a bunch of, like, I forget what brand he says, but he says it in the scene. And I guess it's implied that this character uses, like Dan Aykroyd's character uses these parts. And he has that like, roller coaster that murders people outside of the house and the conveyor belt deal that he has. So like, I think a lot of that just kind of fits into it. I think it's a really fun movie. And I don't know if people talk about it. And it doesn't get enough love. And
I think it's because it has a shitty title. It's one of those ones. If it was called like Dick Knows Murder House, everyone would know about it. But it sounds, if somebody said, "Oh, I have a movie it's called Nothing But Trouble," you'd be like, "Oh, it's got Judge Reinhold and it's a comedy." You would never think about it as this bizarro fucking.
It sounds like a buddy cop film.
It was a commercial failure too. When you read about it, they didn't make any money. You know, and if you think about it, at the time, Ghostbusters 2 was, 90 or 89, 90? So it wasn't that far after that he was in this and he produced this. And I'm pretty sure this is why Dan Aykroyd isn't directing movies. It's because of Nothing But Trouble. And just
because
how
it was
weird
a coke-fueled fever dream.
Dude, I love it, man. I love it. I love Nothing But... I'll always love Nothing But Trouble. It's just a great movie.
Aykroyd is notably like out of his mind when he's given control to write stuff.
Yep.
And so like people always have to rein him back. And so, like he tried to like make the Ghostbusters original film, like fucking crazy. It was like supposed to be like ghost cops and like, I don't know.
Harold
it was
Ramis
a whole lot of other shit.
And like really helped them out with making that viable, because I feel like the original version of Ghostbusters, like it was way more serious in tone, right? If I remember correctly. And it was not a comedy.
More serious in tone. There was more to it. And I think, so like, Aykroyd is like the George Lucas of like writing. God. George Lucas is also the George Lucas of writing.
Yeah, definitely.
And just like needs like one other person to just kind of rein him back.
He needs a restrictor plate on his brain, basically. Yeah.
Because if he doesn't have the restrictor, you get Nothing But Trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Listen,
otherwise,
man,
you get this.
I think it's a great movie. I don't know. I've always loved it, and I've always thought it was underrated. And I get it's batshit insane, but I think he knew what he was doing when he wrote this movie. You know? And he got big. Like Demi Moore, and this was like prime Demi Moore. Like this is when she was like a big deal. I think this was the same year she was there, a year before or after she was in that episode of Tales from the Crypt, where she falls in love with a guy and he's gross and he just has a lot of money and she's using him for that. And she basically looks the same way she does in that episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, she's got like the same hair,
short
almost,
hair, same like white dress and all that. And so it's fucking. And then Chevy Chase, it's Chevy Chase. Come on, so it's kind of crazy when you think about it. And John Candy, who's once again died way too young. And it sucks.
He's the greatest improvisers of all time.
And it's kind of, that's why you would think this would be a huge hit. And at the time, these actors were a big deal still. And it failed. Weird.
Yeah.
Weird.
Plus you get nice cameos from Digital Underground and Tupac.
Tupac Shakur.
Tupac dancing and shit. Amazing. It's amazing. That entire scene. Isn't it the Humpty Dump? Or isn't that the song they perform?
He's in the Humpty Dance.
He's doing the Humpty Dance because they have Digital Underground and Tupac is just playing a member of Digital Underground, even though he never was. But
and like a year later, he stars in Juice, which is another great movie. So it's crazy because this was 91. So I think Juice was like a year or two after that. So I think it was a year or two after that.
Or same year.
Or same year. So wild.
Yeah. All right. Who's
Back
turn?
to
Back
you,
around to
Brian.
me, right? Okay. All right. So I'll be quick on this one because it's just, well, really it's two scenes and we kind of already talked about it a little bit, but I'm going to throw out, although it's certainly not Thanksgiving themed, it's got some good food scenes in it. I am always down to champion, and I don't have my blaster around here. I give you a little hint. Oh, yes, I do. Hold on. I'll tell you what. This will give you an indication of what's up next.
There you go.
Little killer. I'm always down to champion 1988 Killer Clowns from Outer Space. One of the most purely fun movies of all time in my mind. I absolutely love this flick. Two particular scenes that stick out in my mind. One, and they're both iconic in the film. So if you're a horror fan, or if you're certainly a Killer Clowns fan, you know exactly which ones I'm going to talk about. The first one that's I think maybe a little bit more surface level is the popcorn clown monsters. They've got these, essentially they shoot popcorn. They have popcorn guns, the clowns themselves. It's aliens that come down from outer space. They disguise themselves as clowns. That's the movie. Like, doesn't have to, it's no more complicated than that. But it does, they do have some pretty creative, their spaceship is basically like a big top tent. They make their way into there. They have, popcorn blasters that, the popcorn are essentially like little like spores almost. You could kind of think of it as that evolve into these like clown faced monsters. But the real scene that grossed me the fuck out, because the whole thing is like they kind of they look very silly. They look sinister. They look kind of like deformed monsters with clown outfits and makeup on. But the scene that when you learn what they're doing to their victims is when I think that it, like, the real kind of creativity of the monsters shine, which is they are wrapping them in cocoons of cotton candy, and inside the cocoons their bodies are basically being dissolved to be used for fuel. And so they have these like cotton candy cocoons, but when you peel it back, you've got partially, dissolving human beings inside, which is pretty fucking gross. So yeah, look, listen, I don't know if cotton candy is on your Thanksgiving table, but you'll definitely will never look at cotton candy the same again after this flick. This movie, like, I remember distinctly as a kid going to, haunted houses and going to we have an amusement park near us in Pittsburgh called Kennywood. That's an old historical amusement park, and they do a thing called Phantom Fright Nights. It's kind of like, Louie, I know you guys talked a lot about Not Scary Farms and all that sort of stuff. This is like that, but on a smaller level, right? It's a smaller type of thing, but something on par with what you would expect from a Six Flags or something like that. So there's a bunch of haunted houses around the park, and I remember they had a clown one. I was like, I don't really care about the clown one. Like, clowns were never scary to me. Maybe it, but Killer Clowns from Outer Space really, as a teenager, kicked off my love for creepy clowns. Because it mixes whimsical with like weird, scary, fucked up. You know what I mean? So it's almost got this like dreamlike fantasy kind of element to it. And then the characters, but then there's some legit creepy scenes, like when he's basically, the one clown is using, they have names, which I think it's Tiny or something. Like they all have names, but I never remember which one is which. But Tiny is basically like using the asshole chief of police, which you've grown to hate. But he's also the guy who plays the dean in Animal House, I think, too, isn't it? You know him as the guy who always plays a dickhead. I don't know what his
he's the principal, I think, in Savage Streets with Linda Blair too. I forget his name.
Oh God, I love Savage Streets.
I'm pretty sure I forget that actor's name. It's completely slipped my mind. But yeah, he's like, he's the guy that's like, go fuck an iceberg, girl. Go fuck an ice. Yeah, he tells like the male gang members that in that one scene. He's like, I think he's like either the principal or something along those lines in Savage Streets.
Yeah, when like the guy in the movie, I remember in that scene, doesn't like a guy like climb up a flagpole and fall off and die?
I forget.
Like one of the students.
I forget.
And then he's just like, clean this up, go to class. Like, he doesn't give a shit.
He's always just a shitty adult in movies. That's basically what it is.
He's a dean or a principal or something like that. But anyway, yeah. So he's the chief of police that's, busting punks for, having booze and weed or whatever in this one. But he's like basically turned into a ventriloquist dummy by one of the clowns, which is, genuinely pretty creepy. So there is a couple scenes like that are cool. But otherwise it's just like really cartoonish and bizarre. And my wife, who's not like a diehard horror fan, she likes, she likes like The Shining and stuff that's like films that aren't just horror for the sake of horror, but they're like, good quality movies. I don't particularly care. Like I watch absolute dog shit all the time. But I remember the first time she watched Killer Clowns from Outer Space afterwards, she was like, that was an extremely entertaining movie. And I was like, I know, you just can throw it on whenever. Yeah. It's so much fun.
It's kind of like gateway horror. That's another movie that was always on. I remember as a kid on HBO or something. I remember there with Nothing But Trouble. It was always on TV. And I remember seeing it at such a young age. And it's funny because it's what, PG-13. It's not rated R, I'm pretty sure. No. I don't think it is.
No, I think it's PG-13.
Yeah, so it's interesting how that's basically what it is. And I think that's why it's so popular now. Like they're about to release an asymmetrical game, I think, next year or later this year.
I can't wait for it.
I can't wait either.
Psyched.
And it's weird because I just think it's people around our age. We grew up exposed to that movie, and it, again, kind of a gateway horror film. It opened up the rest. It opened up our brains to like just horror as a genre, and then wanting to watch, Nightmare on Elm Street, whatever, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I think that's what it is, because there's still an innocence to Killer Clowns from Outer Space, even though it's really sinister, obviously. But there's an innocence because I guess it's very hammy and it's clowns, which kids know. Clowns are scary to some kids.
And they're silly looking clowns. They're not like murderous,
I was never
knife wielding
scared
clowns.
of the movie. Like Pennywise was creepier to me, and he was not as monster-esque. He was a little more human looking when compared to the Killer Clowns. They look like monsters. They don't look human.
No, they look like trolls, and they do like. They don't talk. No. That too. So they just lure you in with like silly jokes. Yeah. And then they, melt your skin off or whatever.
Balloon animals and stuff like that. One of the creepiest scenes in that movie, and I always remember that from my childhood, is is when the girl's outside. I think it's like a hamburger joint or something like that. And there's the clown outside.
Oh my God. He's trying to get the little girl.
And then you see he has like a hammer, like he's hiding it behind his back. That was always, I was like, wow, that's a really sinister.
Yeah, you're like, is he going to brain this little child?
If I remember correctly, she walks outside and then her mother like grabs her like right
at the last minute, like grabs her.
So that to me was probably the eeriest and creepiest scene in Killer Clowns. The rest of it is ridiculous and fun. So,
Yeah, fun movie. It was very, very much like I said. This is one I'm looking forward to. Maybe in a handful of years, watching with my kids or something like this, because it's not too over the top. But just love it.
11, 12.
And I'm psyched for that game too.
I think that's like when you can see. I think 12 years
that's what I'm saying.
Maybe a good.
Yeah, my kids are 8 and 6.
Not there yet.
No, they need like 4 or 5. The older one needs. They need 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Then it can become a tradition.
Every Thanksgiving, you guys sit around and watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Or Christmas time. Listen, we string the popcorn around the tree and we watch Killer Clowns. All right, Steve, what do you got?
All right. Well, I picked a specific movie, but it actually just applies to a lot of movies. And I picked basically the last 20 minutes of Day of the Dead. But really, that could be the last 20 minutes of any George Romero.
Yes.
Yeah. When everybody gets eaten.
Yeah. When everybody gets eaten. But specifically, like, Day of the Dead is the most gross. It is so vile and mean.
It's really mean-spirited. I agree.
Yeah.
Of the 3 original Romero zombie movies, it's probably the most realistic effects too, because Dawn, it looks like paint, the blood. It doesn't look that realistic. So
it does. And everyone looks like they have face, like it's just more cartoonish.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's people getting hit in the face with pies and stuff like that. Yeah, this one's more gritty.
Like people lose it.
Yeah, the zombies
like a zombie
are blue.
With no eyeball, walking around, half its face missing, a tongue hanging out. It's fucking twisted.
Yeah, I mean, this is early K and B effects too, so that's where you're getting all that. But yeah, like in Dawn of the Dead, the zombies are blue and the blood is pink paint.
Yeah.
So like it's not quite as harsh. This one is just everything is gritty, gross. It's underground. It's dark. And like you have multiple soldiers being torn apart different ways and then feasted on. And then just like as the main characters escape this underground base, they just linger on multiple shots of like just zombies eating and feasting in different parts of the base.
Yep.
So yeah, it's disgusting, but if we're talking feasting scenes, I don't know that you can really get much better, because like it's not something you get in Return of the Living Dead.
No.
That much. Like you get scenes of people being eaten, but it's not just, again, this extended lingering
yeah. It's like bites only. I think Return of the Living, you see someone get bit or eating a limb or something like that, but there's no like I'm assuming you're gonna get to like the most probably iconic scene in Day of the Dead. I'm guessing when it comes to eating zombies eating someone.
The roads.
Yeah. I didn't want to
as
say
he screams choke on them.
Yeah, which is probably, if you think about it, I still to this day think, even if you count Land of the Dead and what were the other Survival, those were the bad. Well, Land has its moments, but like that has to be the most iconic zombie eating scene of all time to this day.
Oh yeah.
I don't think there's another movie that has anything like it.
Or I would say the only one that rivals it maybe is Night of the Living Dead, the little girl eating her mom in the basement.
Sure, yeah.
You know,
But otherwise, like this I remember very distinctly the first time I got shown this movie was at a buddy's house, kid older than me that I used to skateboard with. Like I was probably like 12 and he was like 14, and he had like parents who ignored him, so he just did whatever he wanted. And he would just be like, hey, let's go over, it was like snowing outside, so we weren't skateboards, we were just like sitting on beanbags in his room, like playing guitar. And we watched back to back one evening Taxi Driver and this.
Nice.
Wholesome fun. It's just nice.
Yeah.
The most
and I'm like,
uplifting
it's
film.
a coming of age tale once again.
What a random double feature. Taxi Driver and Day of the Dead. Wow.
I think he was trying to just like, I'm pulling out the stops. He's trying to impress his friend with his gruesome.
You're remembering tonight. You're not going to be the same person tomorrow morning after tonight.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I did it to myself. Because
me too.
My parents used to have like a little like kind of camp up north, like near Pymatooning. For Brian won't get that, but it's up north near Lake Erie almost. But my parents let me rent videos so I could watch videos while they went to like their other friends' campsites and got drunk. And so I was by myself around like 11 or 12. And watching this movie alone.
Day of the Dead by yourself. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because they figured, they thought, they knew night and dawn. So they figured, how bad could it be? And I didn't
know.
I didn't tell them it traumatized me, but like I did not watch that movie for a long time after that.
Movies full of racism and zombies and ring guts. It's really bleak stuff.
Everything in there.
The kitchen sink is literally in that movie. So.
But like to the point of that ending scene, you have like 3 really great effects and instances of people being torn apart. 2 of the lesser soldiers, like everybody talks about Rhodes, but like one of the lesser soldiers gets his head torn off as he's screaming. Yeah. And like it becomes more high pitched as his head is stretched and his vocal cords are stretched as his head is pulled away. And it's like a great effect when you learn about it, because it was the zombie had his hand in the head and was controlling the mouth as he pulled it away.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's like a cool effect when you learn about it, but yeah, and then you have another.
And then the other guy shoots himself with his
Steel
service pistol.
Yeah, Steel just shoots himself. So you have suicide.
It's pretty rough for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, you have suicide introduced early into life. And another guy just has like a strip of skin ripped off his face to expose a full eyeball.
Yeah.
And then you have Rhodes, who is shot multiple times by Bub, and then just like torn apart and watches his own legs be walked down the hallway away from his body, and he screams at him, "Choke on him!"
That's great. That's a great character too in that movie. Like he
you
deserved
hate Rhodes so bad.
Yeah. And he doesn't die till the very end. That's the funny thing too. Like he makes it.
You think he might survive, but he's the guy. He's the bastard that you hate the whole time. You want him to die, but then he dies in the most brutal way that you almost flip and feel for him again, which is like,
I don't think
it's so satisfying.
I don't think he's redeemed at all at the end of this movie.
No, he's not redeemed, but you're just like, Jesus Christ, dude, you just got ripped apart while you were alive. That's not great.
Yeah, it's so brutal because
oddly enough, I wanted Miguel to die worse. He's such a bitch.
Yeah, he sucked, that fucking guy, dude. He survives too, right?
Like,
he sacrifices himself, right? Or something.
He sacrifices himself to lead the zombies because he lays down on the elevator
with the one arm, right? He's got like one arm or something like that. Yeah, he gets his arm chopped off early on.
I just remember the way he talked. He's just like, "What are we gonna do?" Like he
sucked. He fucking sucked.
Definitely obnoxious, but you hate Rhodes and Steele way much more.
Oh yeah, Steele is like, he's just like, he is the toxic masculinity, like on steroids psychopath, who's like loves killing and stuff. Like he's just went full Lord of the Flies.
Right.
Yeah.
Complete
he's if John Goodman's character in The Big Lebowski was played straight.
Oh man, that's a great comparison.
That's a good one.
Yeah. He's Walter Sobchak, like, but straight, like just a person.
Yeah, that's great.
A real human being.
It's funny. I remember seeing that Rhodes, his death scene. I think I saw it first, like in some compilation, or like I remember renting a VHS to some. I forget what movie it was, but I think there was a promo on it for either Fangoria. This is a long time ago. And I remember seeing that movie and this trailer or promotional piece or whatever it was, and that scene was in it. And I remember telling myself, I have to watch this what movie is that? And then I found out.
You are jogging some memories for me because I think you are definitely right because I remember seeing it was like a flash, like a second of him being ripped apart. At the beginning of some other movie or something. Maybe it was some
different like death scenes or something. And then
but it was literally just like a flash second. Because I remember watching the movie for the first time at my buddy's house and going like, "Oh, that's where that's from."
Yeah. So there was it was on some VHS tape before some movie, and I couldn't even tell you the movie, but it was some promotion for something. I wouldn't be surprised if it was like a Fangoria promotion. I could see that being like in like 89, 90. Because Fangoria was still, in its prime at that point. But, I could see them promoting some sort of like VHS. Because I know they had their weekend of horror VHS, but I think that might have been a little earlier. But it might be that. Who knows? It might have been their weekend of horrors VHS. But yeah, I remember seeing that death scene before actually watching the movie and then renting the movie at my local video store. And then finally seeing it. And dude, I remember watching it. I was young. I might have been around the same, like around 11, 12. And I remember looking away a lot because I was like, fuck. Especially that one scene where the zombie, I think he like leans over on the table and his intestines. It was like just, oh God, so gross.
Yeah, they just spill out on the floor.
Nasty. Yeah. I remember being like, oh shit, this is a rough
That's
movie.
the Dr. Frankenstein scene when Rhodes comes in and starts berating Doctor and all that. Yeah.
And then
there's the other zombie who's just eyeballs.
Yeah. I think I saw Day of the Dead and Reanimator the same weekend. I think I rented both of those movies. So like by the end of the weekend, I was like, fuck, I just watched a bunch
completely
of gory.
desensitized.
I was like, all right, this isn't too bad. Now I could rent like House by the Cemetery or like Zombie, like Lucio Fulci Zombie or something like that. So
So I think I tracked it down. What you guys were talking about. There is a VHS series called Fangoria's Scream Greats.
There we go.
Okay.
And there's a lot of clips. There's a lot of clips of Day of the Dead in there.
Okay.
But, and then there's also talking to Tom Savini. So
there you go. So
that might have been it. Yeah.
I knew it was in that ballpark because I vividly remember it was a promotion for something. And then that's how I was like, oh, I want to watch that movie. And like, obviously you're introduced to a bunch of horror movies because of Fangoria. So.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like something my aunt would have had for sure. Like she loves all those like compilation, VHSs and stuff. But
people being slaughtered for 45 minutes just back to back.
Yeah, just the concentrated. Yeah,
the best parts. It's
all right.
My turn, I think, right?
Yeah, Louie, you're on. This is your last one.
So yes, this is my last one. This is super lighthearted. This is probably the most nothing but Trouble's pretty lighthearted, I guess. In a way, it's still dark undertones there. But my next pick is now I'm kind of cheating here because it's two scenes that are kind of connected in a way. And it's from Elvira, Mistress of the Dark from 1988. I'm a big Elvira fan. This was honestly, this came to mind as well when I thought about food and horror. Again, comedy, horror. It's fucking Elvira. Come on. Like, who doesn't like Elvira? And I don't think I need to get into the plot of Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. I think most of your listeners, I'm guessing, if you don't, shame on you because it's fucking Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. But I'll give you a quick brief synopsis. Elvira, she's a horror host. She's tired of the abuse at the station she works at. She wants to be a showgirl in Las Vegas. She drives to Las Vegas, road trip style. And of course, her car breaks down in some like backwoods town and everyone is uptight and conservative. And Elvira is not very loose, obviously. And the town wants her out of there and she's kind of stuck there and she's teaching them, she's teaching them about horror films and sex and all the kids love
how to
her.
Lighten up and how to be not be as repressed and all
really
this.
Really liberal, kind of just, very loose. She just wants to show it all. It's Elvira. There's cleavage jokes for days and sex jokes for days. But that's basically the movie. I love it. And there's a scene, there's like this dude, I forget the character's name, that lives in town. He's like this handsome stud guy and, jacked in shape and stuff. And, Elvira loves her.
Wearing flannels.
Yes. She loves her fellas. She loves her muscular men. And she's trying to impress this guy. Now, there's a plot point I missed completely. Basically, she's inheriting also money. I think that's why she goes to the town. Sorry. That's why she goes to the town and her car breaks down. She's inheriting a house and she inherits this cookbook or spell book because her aunt,
the one I was going to say, what's her other movie? That's the one where she's going to be a showgirl.
No, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, she wants to be a showgirl in Las Vegas, and on her way to Vegas or something along those lines, she has to stop. Because
the other movie, which is like Haunted
called?
Elvira's Haunted Hills.
That one's like a period piece.
Has a similar plot. Too.
It's like a period piece, and she goes to this house, and it's something.
But she's doing a showgirl act in like Transylvania.
It's always a showgirl act with Elvira. That's kind of her thing. But she goes to this town because she's inheriting this house and this spell book, and she thinks it's money. That's what it is. I got the two plots confused there. But she gets stuck. Her car does break down in this town. But she's trying to impress this guy. She's got the spell book. She's going to make a casserole for the handsome fella. And what ends up happening is she starts fucking up the ingredients. And she doesn't have some of these weird things that are in this recipe. And she adds Doritos to it or chips and all this other shit.
She sits on the chips. That's my favorite part.
Yeah.
That's such a Midwestern thing. Like, I don't know if that's something you grew up with, but no. Growing up we're in Western Pennsylvania, which is basically, I live like almost on the Ohio border. Like it's the Midwest, and casserole, everything's a casserole, and you either top it with stovetop stuffing, crushed Ritz crackers, or crushed potato chips. That's it. And there's always cream of mushroom and or cream of chicken soup in it.
It's funny because like to me, and I guess it's just where I'm born and raised from New York. Like I never saw that growing up. So
that's my biggest problem with New York. Terrible casserole culture.
There's no I did not eat it. I probably didn't have a casserole until I was 25 years old or some shit. So in all honesty, even culturally, that just wasn't a thing for me growing up. But she's making this casserole and she puts the chips on top of it. She's really confident and all that. And again, she fucked up the ingredients. So she takes the casserole out to this guy and she's proud of it. She opens it up and this creature, it's like this reptile lizard thing erupts from it. And she's so confused. They're trying to fight it off, and it's screaming and shrieking and biting at them. Yeah. And she's so confused. They rush it into the kitchen, and they shove it into the garbage disposal and she's just hammering it down. It's a ridiculous scene, but it plays into like the humor of Elvira, which is what I think is so great. And then she's got the line after it goes down the garbage disposal. She goes, "First time I was the appetizer for the main course." So just a silly line. It's Elvira's like known for one-liners. And I just love how they incorporated kind of like a creature effect into a movie that doesn't really have that many creature effects in it.
No, there's not really anything like supernatural except for this scene.
And her being and the ending, I guess, where she's fighting her warlock uncle or great-grandfather. I forget what he is. And, you know, she's a witch, or she's the ancestor, like whatever. She's the great-granddaughter of a witch. So I guess like it comes out of left field, and I've always just liked this scene and how she's trying. And what I love is the guy still wants to mess around with Elvira. Like he's still into Elvira after this creature.
No, that didn't shake him.
Phase him at all. He was all about listen, and I don't blame him. I get it. Respectfully, once again, it's Elvira. Come on now. But that's the first scene. Now there's another scene with a casserole in the movie that I always thought was really funny. And so the townspeople, they treat Elvira like shit, and she wants to get back at them. I forget why she wants to get back at them. They did something to her.
Well, the one woman's like spreading rumors about her. And then they're trying to like get the house from her.
I forget if it's after the movie theater scene where they trick her with the tar on her, with the flash dance scene where she's on stage and she's showing all the people, I forget what movie, and then they trick her. It's like Carrie, but it's like tar instead of feathers or water or whatever, oil, whatever she wanted to rub herself down in. But she wants to get back at the townspeople. So she makes the casserole thinking, okay, I'll take this casserole to this like picnic event and they'll have to deal with this creature because it happened to her. So she takes the casserole, sits it on the table, walks away. The people start eating all the food. They start eating the casserole. And then out of nowhere, they start having an orgy. Everyone's super horny and they all want to just fuck each other. The one really shitty like girl sits on a guy's face, which is hysterical. Like he's just sitting there and she like sits on his face. They're like all half naked. And I think Elvira has a line where she explains that I guess she messed up on an ingredient and that's why the monster didn't emerge. It was just made everyone horny.
Yeah, all the recipes, like that's the funny thing. Like the recipes come from her great aunt or grandma's cookbook, and she's got all these magic ingredients. It's like fucking worms and all type of weird stuff. So she messed it up enough where instead of it being a monster, it's some sort of like casserole that makes you super horny, which for me is all casseroles. It's
like clams. It just makes people horny, I guess. I don't know.
Well, it's all these like old repressed Midwestern white people just like slapping each other's ass and dry humping
hysterical
in the park.
Well, like I Put a Spell on You is playing, which kind of right. I'm pretty sure it's I Put a Spell on You. It's playing over the scene, so it works so well. And once again, this is another movie I saw at a really young age. I think I saw this when I was like 7 years old. Here, we got like WPIX, and that's where I watched a lot of my movies in New York. And I remember just seeing that at a really young age and just not knowing what's going on, but kind of knowing what, it was like, I kind of get what's going on and just being a little confused.
Something I don't understand is happening.
But I know I'm not supposed to be watching this. Like whatever they're doing, I'm not supposed to be watching this. But I just love how like Elvira, like it backfires on her twice, but in a good way, like for the better with like the townspeople, the shitty townspeople, because she's trying to impress this dude and a creature pops out of the casserole. And then she tries to get at the townspeople with the creature. And instead it just makes them all horny and she still wins in the end. So it's just great. And I love how the next day they're like at a meeting. And he's like,
it's all awkward.
It's all awkward. And he's like, oh, you were dry humping me and you were like a wild animal.
They're all like pointing fingers at each other. Like, oh, no, it was you came onto me.
And none of them know that it was the casserole, too. They're completely oblivious to it. They don't know that Elvira tricked them and kind of basically poisoned them and made them like horn dogs. So it's just a great scene. It's a great scene. It involves food. And I always got a kick out of it. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's such a fun movie.
Yeah,
they
the whole movie's
actually
great.
just yeah. One of my favorite lines, which, I mean, yeah, she's known for like kind of vaudeville-y and kind of like one-liners, is whenever she crashes the car or her car breaks down and somebody runs into her, I forget, but that's how she gets stuck in the town. And the guy comes up to her that ends up being like the romantic interest and is like, how's your head? And she's like all like disoriented and she goes, I don't know, I haven't had any complaints yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of that everything is like cleavage jokes and stuff like that. That's just how.
Yeah.
And her second movie, The Haunted Hill, I actually watched that recently because I think they did it on like the Joe Bob show.
Yeah, they done the last drive-in.
Yeah. They screened it. I think it was for Halloween, and it was
Cassandra Peterson was a guest.
I just read her book recently too. That woman, she lived a wild life, man. It's crazy, crazy shit, and it's crazy too because like with the whole Elvira character, it was like her last like attempt at fame and becoming an actress. It's crazy how and now she's just known as Elvira. She's 71 years old and will forever just be like, that's Elvira. That's Cassandra Peterson's Elvira. Like that's, so yeah, Elvira and Mistress of the Dark is just a great movie. All fun movies. You know what's funny now thinking about it? Nothing But Trouble, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. That'd be a good double feature too. That'd be two good movies to watch back to back. They kind of tonally sort of work. Bizarre, weird, dark humor and weird shit in there. They both work.
Yeah.
Unintentionally picked two movies that kind of work well together. So.
Yeah. Well, I'll do my last one, and Steve, you did all yours, right?
Yeah,
so
I'm done.
This is our last one. This one would not mesh with those movies necessarily. I guess in the sense that it's like a black comedy, but tonally, this movie is just an absolute weird disaster. And Steve, I was surprised. We were talking about before this. This is one that Steve hasn't seen yet, so I'm excited to for you to check this one out, Louie. I'm curious if you've seen it. Is 1987's Blood Diner?
I've seen Blood Diner.
Yeah, Blood Diner. This is one that I saw when I was a kid. So I remember there was a video store, independent little like mom and pop style video store, like literally under an underpass in like the town up from me. This was before like maybe right when Blockbuster started coming in, so like you would still, there were still a lot of mom and pop stores, but this was like the grimy, dingy like video store that was like, yeah, that was like, if you don't bring it back tomorrow, they're going to call your house and harass you kind of thing. Like, and it was, and I would say, like, man, I wish I could remember the name, but I think it was just called like, oh, you know what? It was called like Newsstand Video or something like that. Cause it was a video store that was like a little bodega kind of store that ended up like getting movies to rent. Remember like when the video store boom really like was taken off in the early 90s, you would have stores that had no business renting movies, just buy a bunch of VHSs and put them on like a spinning rack and go like, we're a rental store now, So I think this is a place that did that, and then it just slowly devolved into just pretty much only being a video store, but it was called Newsstand Video. Anyway, we rented Blood Diner from there. Me and my brother, my cousin, we were probably, I don't know, 12 years old or something like that. Went and watched it. Loved it. We're like, this movie's absolute batshit. We probably rented it 4 or 5 times, and then I didn't see it for 20 freaking years.
It was hard to find for a while. Like that VHS was like sought after, $200. Then I think
I know even VHS like DVD cover. Like I don't know if it ever officially released.
Vestron Video released the Blu-ray. I think maybe 4 or 5. I have that. I think I have it.
Yeah.
And it was for a while. I remember people couldn't find. I think Dave has a copy of it that he got for a really good price, and I think the tape still runs for a couple bucks. That's a gem right there.
Well, and even like the Blu-ray, it's like still like $70 or something like that. Like it's
maybe now.
Yeah, I tried to. Yeah, it was just, I remember you're right. It was hard to find for years and I could not find it anywhere. And it was almost like that kind of like holy grail movie for me where I was like, I remembered it, but I couldn't, there was nowhere to watch it. And, it was one of those ones when you're like at a, flea market, or you're at like a place looking through VHS tapes. It's the one you're hoping to find kind of thing. And then finally, I found a copy on Blu-ray a couple years ago. And now I think you can find it on like YouTube or what. I don't know. It might be on YouTube. Anyway, it's an absolute batshit bonkers movie. It is like, this is what happens when somebody's making a movie and also cocaine. Like, that's what this movie is, I think. It's just batshit. I won't even get into the plot too much, but essentially what happens is it's this guy named Uncle Anwar is like this psychotic serial killer, whatever. You come to learn that he was murdering all these people because he was trying to resurrect a goddess from 5 million years ago, and he had to do this whole like blood sacrifice feast thing. This was originally meant to be a sequel to Herschel Gordon Lewis's Blood Feast, which is,
I think I remember hearing that.
Considered to be like one of the first like gore movies, gross out kind of gory horror movies. And then I think they started to write it and they were like, nah, this is not going to make sense at all. Let's just make it our own movie. But long story short, he gets just shot like, Jason Goes to Hell style by all these cops. And he eventually, his nephews, I believe it is, kind of like pick up his mission of, resurrecting this. But they're not necessarily bad guys. Like, they're not really treated like bad guys. Like, tonally the movie is all over the place. But one of the overall thing is they are trying to like lure in all of these victims by creating a vegetarian restaurants where they feed,
if I remember correctly,
people.
It's weird. Yeah, they're like, it's like they're in feed, but people don't know that they're feeding them human flesh or some shit like that.
No, they think it's vegetarian cuisine, but which is like, if you're trying to market as a vegetarian cuisine, why? Like, if it was like, Motel Hell style and you're putting people in the sausage, that makes sense. But if you're trying to like propose,
this plot would work better now, where there's like Beyond Meat and Beyond like Impossible.
Exactly.
It's ahead of its time. This Blood Diner.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm surprised this hasn't been remade yet. That would be like the perfect.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You read my mind. This is ripe for a remake. So's the stuff. Yeah. But this is. It's so bizarre. So anyway, two scenes come to mind. There's a lot of gross out scenes in this movie, some of which just involve food, not actually people. Like the shit they do with like vegetables, it's really gross. But then there's also they're trying to rebuild this 5 million year old. I think her name's like Sheetar or something like that. Goddess, Egyptian goddess or whatever. Anyway, they build a woman out of vegetables, which is not really like, they're trying to figure out how to do this whole thing, but then they eventually resurrect their uncle who started the whole ritual, but they only resurrect his brain. So he's like a brain with eyeballs in a jar, which you put a brain in a jar, I'm going to watch it. It doesn't matter what it is. But the scene that really sticks out to me is at the diner counter, and they're talking about, so no food is actually being prepared necessarily, although this movie is all about, this restaurant and preparing food and killing people, putting them in the food and all that stuff. There's one scene where I remember when I finally watched this, I didn't remember it from when I was a kid, but I was like, did somebody slip something in my drink? Am I hallucinating? Because there's a scene where they go to check out this other popular diner, and they're talking to this guy who ends up being a significant character later, but he runs this other diner, and they're talking to him, and he keeps deferring questions to a customer at the counter.
I think
who is just remember. A dummy.
Yeah, I remember that. I think I know what you're talking about.
It's a dummy, a weird, not meant to look real at all. It's like a ventriloquist dummy, but if it's made out of like paper mache almost, but it has a beard and a cowboy hat. And the proprietor of the diner is almost doing like a ventriloquist act with him, but no one else notices. The cops think it's a real person,
it's weird,
but it doesn't look even remotely real. And they're like, asking about the other diner down the road, and he's like, when he does the voice, he like kind of does it like this. Like that's how his voice is. And he's like, well, it's the way they season the food. It's a special recipe.
Oh, God.
It's so weird, kind of.
Oh, my God.
He has a cowboy hat. It doesn't make any sense. It never is explained.
The whole movie's really
that's
dreamlike. I haven't watched it in a while, but I remember it being really kind of hazy and just really odd and dreamlike the entire movie.
It's so strange.
Yeah.
It is one of the movies that comes to my mind when I think of like these bizarre, outlandish schlock horror movies that just feel like a fever dream. Blood Diner is one of those to me.
It's on the top of the list.
It sounds like it would go great hand in hand as a double feature with Body Melt.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah. Well, this is the thing about it is when I was a kid, I remember it as being just so batshit. And then, as time goes on, I remember that about a lot of movies. And then you watch it and you're like, it's not quite what I remembered. Well, finally, because I went, a good, I don't know, maybe 15 years between viewings on this movie. And when I finally did, I was like, oh no, it lives up to what I remember as being just one of the most batshit movies I've ever seen in my life.
I have to revisit Blood Diner too. It's been a long, I own a copy of it. I did not know the Blu-ray was out of print. I got to double look into that. But yeah, I remember.
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
I remember like the VHS boom when it first came back, like when it was making a resurgence. I remember that was one of the like really popular tapes that everyone was talking about. That and like Black Devil Doll from Hell. A lot of people couldn't find. Like those were like two movies people couldn't find. And I always remember Blood Diner was one of them. And I have to. It's been so long. I have to rewatch Blood Diner.
Oh, see now it looks pretty. It looks like it's pretty easy to find
Vestron,
nowadays.
right? Is it Vestron? Yeah,
yeah. You can get it from FYE for like $35.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. But I do remember like years ago trying to find it, and it was like extremely expensive. And maybe it was a VHS that I was looking for at the time.
I remember the tape being like the cheapest would be $100. And no, it's changed since that. Because right now I'm looking at you can get it on Amazon Prime, the Vestron collection series for $23. But I remember back in the day when I was looking it up, it was freaking impossible to find. There you go. You need a copy of Blood Diner now. Now you know where to.
I'm literally ordering it. Yeah, I'm gonna find some place that's not Amazon to order it from. But all right, that's it. That wraps up our culinary escapades for today, boys and girls. I hope you appreciated it. Thank you, Louie, for joining us for this episode. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad we finally got you on here. We've been talking about it for forever, and it was a blast. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, guys. It was fun. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
It's been like a year, right, since we talked about having me on the show.
It's been forever. And we have other, we're like, we got to get, there's like 3 or 4 other people that we've already talked about getting on. But hey, listen, we're getting around to it, guys. Here, don't rush me. We're disorganized over here. But like I said, if you haven't already, when we talked about Top of the Tour, go check out the Haunted Hangover. It's an absolute blast, especially if you're into, spooky nostalgia and Halloween and all that sort of thing. So I love the show. You guys, I'm sure will as well. So, Steve, anything else we're forgetting? Anything else we got to do? Go check out on the social medias at Halloween is Forever on the Instagram. If you shoot us a DM or comment on that post if you want to get in on the old Secret Satan for the month of December, because we're gonna be talking about Nightmare on Elm Street flicks. So maybe you want to get in there because you want to punish Meg and Steve for their insolence. Maybe you want to reward me,
don't reward
for being a kind and just champ. I don't know, but go on there and get involved.
You made us watch Chuck Norris movie. That's not kind and just.
I did, but it was a Chuck Norris horror movie. But yeah, anything else I'm forgetting?
Blood Diner VHS from 1989, pre-owned. Buy it now, $69.99 with $3.94 shipping on eBay.
There you go.
That's not too bad. Not terrible. Yeah. The market must be coming down, or people were pulling out their copies from their basements and going, wait, I might be able to sell this shit now. All right, listen, I know what Santa Claus is bringing me now. That's
a copy of Blood Diner.
Blood Diner on VHS and Blu-ray.
There you go.
All right, boys and ghouls. Thanks as always for tuning in. Join us next week when we do some more spooky, ooky, probably slightly vaguely holiday related shit. For the Halloween is Forever crew, I'm Brian.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Louie.
All right, see you later. Bye.